I've got a couple of amendments to add to the agenda.
Okay.
There was one that was inadvertently left off the agenda, JK Contracting at 57 Seaside Road. It's a deck. So we want to continue that, right, Carol?
Yeah.
So I'd like a motion to continue 57 Surfside Road to, well, actually, we'll put it on the agenda. We'll do that in a minute, sorry. And then there'll be an additional partial CFC for Diamond Development at 50 Old Oak and Bucket Road. And then Norton 23 Sunset Road has requested a continuance for the next meeting. And we'll read that again. Anything else that needs to get added, Pat?
Did you continue the first one at 6:30?
We haven't done.
Well, we're just making a motion for the agenda.
Once we get to the end.
Make a motion
For those amendments?
for the agenda with the amendments as noted.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So I guess, was 57 Surfside, is that an RDA or is that an NOI?
NOI.
So that can be done now. So we'll move to continue 57 Seaside Road, JK Contracting to 517. And we'll try to,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to continue 57 Seaside to May 17th at 6:30.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Do we want to just go into, launch into some of these IDAs and then, so is Tornsey, 10 Marshfield Ave, am I saying that right? Torsley. 24 by 14 elevated deck. Just, we don't really have a table here, so if you want to let us know.
I'm Mike Viviano with Viviano General Contractors. This is the owner, Richard Torsley. It's actually, it's a shed, so I don't know if you call that elevated deck, but this is a shed at 10 Marshfield Ave in Hummerock. 10 Marshfield Ave is the second building across the bridge on the right where the Pets food store used to be. We're looking to construct the shed. It's going to be elevated on concrete piers. So we spoke with the conservation agent. He wanted it elevated somewhere 12 to 18 inches off the ground. So we proposed it that way, and the building inspector was fine with all that as well.
Okay. Pat?
Yeah, it didn't have to go above base flood elevation, it's just so that the water could pass underneath it, so we didn't require a full, so you're gonna be using sonotubes, you say?
No, we're going to use those precast concrete 5-foot piers into the ground.
And I don't know if, on the filing fee, was the riverfront area, or is it outside? Is it 200 feet?
Doesn't show.
I can throw it in. It's right now, it looks like it's in a gravel parking lot, the area that you're proposing.
Sure, yes.
Doesn't look like it would impact any of what is this, the basketball court and everything parking lot, so
Yeah. Oh.
On the building end, with the building part, we're keeping the proper setback from the lot.
Is there a plot plan with that kind?
What zone is this in?
Yes, here you go. It's on the next page.
If any water comes through, it doesn't come through with much strength at all. A couple of years ago, a little water came running down the street, but it's nothing.
The only question I would have is on the plans that you did submit to us, it says 18 to 24 inches, the height, if you're going to raise it. I mean, we just have to be clear what you are, or how high you are.
Sure, I mean, 18, it could be anywhere from 12. It depends on how far those piles go in the ground. So, you know, I kind of left that open to whatever the conservation agent thought was proper. Water did come up at some point.
Yeah. Well,
So do we have to specify for it?
You can.
Yeah, I was just thinking that a contractor might recommend one over the other. We didn't, I don't know if by raising it 24 inches, that causes some other problem, or...
18 would be perfect for the
That's
building
fine, I
perspective.
just want.
So why don't we say a minimum of 18, and then however it works out.
So why is this in our purview? Because it's proximity to the river?
Yeah, it's in the flood.
In the flood zone.
Whole thing's with our-
Okay.
Anybody in the audience for this?
I make a motion.
Lisa, did you have any comment? Other than that, you're all set?
No, I'm all set. Pat and I went by there today.
Okay.
I make a motion for -3.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, if that little blind opens up, I wonder if people could look in. Upton, 172 Central Ave, demolish and remove building and various tanks. 72 Central Ave. Thank you. It's Upton, 192 Central Ave.
Okay. This was the,
You know what?
demolition by the,
Let me just, where is that one? I don't know, I think Lisa was messing with these things.
I'm always the scapegoat.
Yeah. I got it. On May 3rd, 2017, during the 6:15 meeting of the Public Safety Complex Emergency Operations Center, OEC, located at 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will request of Peter Upton a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws to demolish and remove a building and various tanks on property located at 192 Central Ave, Hummerock. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
So we don't have any plans for this or anything?
This one, they wanted to take out the house and the foundation. The building department condemned the house, so it was a dangerous situation, so they had to do it before we were able to have a hearing. So they took down the structure and left the foundation in place, so there's no disturbance on the dune. So right now, it's just a concrete foundation and a dune. If they want to take that out, then they'd have to file again with us a notice of intent. Guy doesn't know whether he wants to rebuild on the site or just do nothing for a while.
Well, what is this removed 275-gallon oil tank?
That was in the basements.
So that's out already?
Yeah,
Oh,
the fire
okay.
department approved that witness.
Okay.
So it's all after.
So we're
that.
just approving something that's already done?
Right, right, yeah, they had a.
Never done that before.
Not on TV, no.
Kerosene tanks, and affordable gas tanks. Yeah,
Okay?
yeah, unless anyone has any.
Paul?
Bob?
No
Lisa?
questions?
Anybody in the audience?
I make a motion for -3.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I never did read the first one. This whole thing's got me,
Good place.
okay, yeah, sorry. On May 3rd, 2017, at 6:15 meeting, Public Safety Building Complex in the Emergency Operating Center, located at 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Peter Upton for a determination of applicability of the I just read that one. So, request of Richard Tornsley for a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Wetlands bylaws for a 24 by 14 elevated shed on property located 10 Marshfield Ave. So, we did that one.
So the next one, Frank, unless somebody is representing Brady, I think we should hold off on that. No, you are, okay.
Okay. You know what I realized? There's really no place for anybody that's presented something to stand. Are we going to want,
There's no table.
we can set them up?
The chairs over here.
You got an easel? Yeah, why don't you just put it over here? We'll shift a few chairs back.
Now, I would have thought with a new building, they would have a built-in.
So what are we going to?
Get it over here?
We just don't have.
Oh, we can't
Use
do
it.
it.
Yeah.
Maybe you should set up right up, almost right off a penny.
Directly integrated with the county. so-
Yeah.
Merchandise.
Over there.
And everything.
Yeah, great.
If we need to, we can shift this whole thing this way a
Yeah.
little bit. John, should we shift all these tables this way a little, do you think?
I think it should be all right.
Okay.
There's got to be a better place to see this way far away. There's not over here, shouldn't it be over here?
Just
On the May 3rd, 2017, during a 6:15 meeting, at the Public Safety Complex Emergency Operations Center located at 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Roberta Hall for a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands bylaws to repair a septic system on property located at 113 AKA 111 Clap Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
My name is Rob Carlson. I'm from Grade Consulting, filling in for Darren Grady tonight. I have 3 revised plans. There was a Board of Health amendment for revision. Not much difference setback-wise or anything conservation concerning. Professional system area. You can see right above the benchmark to show that's the only difference in the plan.
So what are we doing?
I just,
New septic system?
Basically outside the home.
the old one is out front. Almost, but there's a gravel driveway out in front of the house. That's where the existing system is. I'll build that. Removing the tanks out to the backyard further away from the wetlands outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. Then come over to the leaching field, over the side yard, and that's outside of the 100-foot buffer zone as well.
So this is a failed system that's there now? Okay. And why isn't it going back to where it was?
That's closer to the resource area.
Okay, so this is
It was
further away.
successful, I believe.
Yeah, it was in the 50-foot before.
Right, so it's an RDA, but they asked if the work was subject to the Wetland Protection Act and the work in the area is subject to the bylaw. And on this one, because it's septic, we could probably go through with an approval under an RDA, but there's a lot of resource areas out here that we're not going to confirm by issuing this determination. We could probably allow the work for septic, but there's probably other projects planned out here, and there's riverfront, and there's a natural heritage area, and so I think we have to separate the look at the wetland resource areas from the work of a field system that we'd like to see repaired.
So whatever orders we're going to write tonight will be specific to this one project.
Right.
And I think what Pat's saying is we're not going to accept these, they've delineated the wetland, and they've made some inference to some of the resource areas, but we're not going to accept that what's on here is the only thing that's on here. And if they were to come back with future proposals for this project, they would have to give us more information.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we are to some degree accepting them because we're allowing it, but we're allowing it because we think it's an improvement on the existing.
Right, you're not verifying them,
Yeah,
right.
gotcha.
Right, the closest resource area, this system is outside of the one vegetated wetland, but there's riverfront area in the back that really wasn't delineated on the plan, but it is out back and it extends on the property. It's also a natural heritage area, and I think before you do septic, even though it's allowed under the Wetland Protection Act, you have to notify natural heritage. And that might have been noted by Jen in the Board of Health. Did she mention that to you?
No, she did not.
Okay. So, yeah, we could write that in, or she could let you know.
So you're saying National Heritage needs to be notified for the septic?
Any kind of work out there, you have to notify them. They have to allow a Title V upgrade, but there may be some kind of notification that's required. But I can go through that with Jen.
Okay. I guess typically we try to get this as far from the wetlands as possible, and the only thing that I could see here is that this thing could be like maybe 20 feet closer towards the pool. Do you know why they chose that spot?
It's sort of an open flat yard, and it's a raised system.
Okay.
It wouldn't look good just sticking out in the middle of the yard,
Well, and it's outside the 100.
but it's still.
Yeah, but what we try to look for is to get as far from that wetlands as possible, what we ask people to do. Good, sorry. Okay. And the area where it's going now is partially a lawn or?
Yep, for the most part it's lawn, there's a little bit of, I wouldn't even say tree clearing, it's more brush, light wooded vegetation.
Okay,
I'm all set.
Bill?
Good.
Anything else, Pat?
Yeah, I mean, the type of determination isn't the standard determination of applicability because the system's outside 100, but we're not confirming the wetlands. So there's 3 possibilities. I'm not sure if we can check 2 or 3 of the boxes or whether the state is going to require 1, but it's boundaries of the resource areas listed are not confirmed by the determination regardless of whether such boundaries are contained on the plans. That makes sense, but that is a positive determination, and that would require a future notice of intent. You wouldn't want to notice of intent for the septic piece, but if there was another job. So that's one possible box. And then -2 would be the work described as within an area subject to, because there's a riverfront area, but it won't alter the area, so we could allow it under that. And then the other thing is a -5, and we've never even seen one of those before. That is an area described, the subject protection, since the work meets the requirements of the following, Title 5, the septic exemption, no setback required. That seems to make the most sense, but I mean, if you could say that it'll be one of those 3, and we'll just confirm it with DEP. Either way, they can go ahead with the septic work within 7 days after you get it.
You're making the motion, Penny.
Yeah, well, I know that...
Take A, door A, B, or C.
Yeah, well, we can do 2. I know we've done those in the past, before you came on board. You know, 2 and 3, we used to do quite a few of those. Okay, I don't know about the 3, so we'll make a motion for a -2, 3, or 5.
First one would be a positive 2B, and then a -2 or a -5. And, I mean, if we're basically allowing the work, we could see how the state wants us to.
Why don't we just say?
Why don't we just say a negative?
Negative, yeah.
Subject to find out what condition.
Subject to DEP, okay?
Negative determination.
So I make a motion.
I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Canfield, 39 Surfside Road. There you go. On May 3rd, 2017, during a 6:15 meeting, Public Safety Building and the Emergency Operations Center located at 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will act on the request of Karen Canfield for a determination of applicability of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Scituate Wetlands Bylaw to install a hot tub on property located at 39 Surfside Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Well, I cleverly gave you my original when I turned it on my papers, so hopefully you have it in front of you. We just received property is set back from the seawall, and the structure set back from the seawall, and we'd like to put compacted dirt, put down stone dust, and put concrete pavers as the base on which we would set the hot tub. And hopefully you can see the site where that is located.
Can we do right next to the door?
Brass.
It's right here. Okay, that's the seawall.
No,
Yeah,
it's
but you
so
still-
since
it's
it's
right next
behind.
to the deck, yeah.
Yeah.
So it'd be right.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you drew a kind of an imaginary line to the
Across the
deck,
back.
it would still be on the house's side of it.
Exactly,
That
yeah,
aerial
it would
picture,
be,
Bill.
Yeah.
it would run, it would abut the deck on the south side.
One more. Just going right down.
That's right here?
Yeah. So it'll be right on the end of the deck, same setback, way back from the seawall.
Is that the last house?
No, it's the old Coast Guard.
Yeah, it's the old life-saving building.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Penny, any questions?
No, I'm okay.
Bill?
Okay.
Good?
So, Pat, any?
Yeah, it's not in the velocity zone, but it's not in the AE, but it's an overwash zone, so you're going to get some water flowing through there. So we talked about maybe making sure it was secured well, and trying not to build it in a way where it deflects water onto someone else's property. The other thing is, I mean, maybe look at the mitigation on something in a AO zone that's going to be replacing the lawn area.
Is there any way, I mean, you're proposing to dig this out and put it on a concrete pad?
Instead of pad, what I wanted to do was pavers, so
Pavers.
that it wasn't so.
Right.
permaculture.
I mean, the other alternative would be to actually put it on a small deck, like was, you put sonotubes and build a wood deck, and then the water could flow under it. I mean, we don't,
Hadn't thought of that.
as a way to, I mean, what we're trying to do is avoid obstructions when the water comes over the seawall. The more obstructions that are there, it pushes the water either onto a neighbor or something else. So sometimes we look for ways to at least make sure that water can move as freely as possible. As Pat said, it's set back far enough so it's really not in a velocity zone, but it still is an overwash area. And you've got a good-sized yard, and there's lawn in front of it, and it's not like...
Yeah, lawn on both sides, and it washes out to the street, and it's all grass area all the way down.
I mean, you're familiar with the area more than others, but those have pumps and equipment and stuff like that. I mean, you may want to think about building that. We've done that before, built, you know, it has to be built a little stronger, the deck, to support that weight. But if it was built up and it even had a foot or something underneath it, you might actually save yourself replacing motors and controls and all that stuff.
That's a really good thought. So could I amend to do
Yeah.
one or the other after I talk to my contractor?
I think just get back to us and let us know which process you're going to go. If you can make a little sketch or something
Okay.
of that, I would think that would be okay, wouldn't you, Pat?
Probably a good idea.
All right?
Okay.
Guys figure out where you are?
Yeah,
No,
Yeah, we're
I'm
looking
just
at it.
trying to show him.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. You're good, Pat?
Fine.
Okay.
I make a motion for a -3.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you, good luck.
You can knock off a few,
Do we continue the 6:30?
Yeah, just a sec. I make a motion to continue the town of Scituate, DCW 2632 Gardner Road, till May 17th at 7:45.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We also have,
15
Let me-
minutes.
So for people that are here for the Toll Brothers hearing, we don't have that scheduled till 7, so we're going to be doing other things until 7, because we can't really start it until 7 o'clock. Okay.
and then also, if anyone was here for 23 Sunset Road, that is going to be continued to the next meeting. Want to do that partial CFC? What's that?
Which one?
Diamond Development, 50 Old Oaken Bucket.
Okay, this is a closing coming up, there's a request for a partial, and we have the partial as-built, and we have the plan. You took pictures, so...
Yep. I think I sent them to you guys.
Yes, I saw.
Yeah, here's the approved plan.
So I guess the question is, if I may, what is yet to be done?
Appears to be landscaping. They were hoping to get the grass seeded this past week and it rained, so right now the loam is on the lawn, but it's not landscaped. But the wall is in, driveways in, septic's in, and you were saying you think the storm scepter is in the...
It's in the back, and that's all been planted. There's
Yeah.
2 rows of silksock. So there's one at the back of the property, the far back of the property, and then that area, that scepter is here. Although I'm not sure if this piece right here is totally finished, but this is definitely finished
Right.
across the back.
Yeah.
And then there's a second silt sock in here, and then from here up is where the lawn is.
Yeah, and the propane tank is in too.
Right.
On this side. Septic is in, and then the grading out by the street, they captured the street drainage, and they're gonna be treating it and piping it around. So it's not a full certificate of compliance. They have rough grades on there, but until it's landscaped, we wouldn't be issuing a full certificate of compliance. But I think at this point,
But the big things are done.
Did we need to do stormwater on this? No.
they were just under on this
Okay.
one. But they have agreed.
Yeah, okay.
They did catch base, for the
Yeah,
runoff.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was a voluntary thing, they didn't have to do it, so. So they'd have to return to us for a full certificate of compliance, but
But they are going to pass paper.
Well, just procedurally, if we do a partial CFC, the property is sold, who is then responsible for?
at the closing, it'll appear in the deed as something remaining to be done on there, so there's still open order.
So the owner then assumes the responsibility?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, the other thing you can do is you can ask for some sort of monetary
From the
Some-
contractor?
to hold until,
Yeah.
something in escrow,
Uh-huh.
to hold until it's finished.
Given the
Yeah,
fact
we've
that
done
this-
that, too.
Yeah, but given the fact that this is, all we've really been talking about is grass?
It's a lawn,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but there's some stuff to finish up in the back
Yeah.
and whatnot. I mean, like I said, the part that seemed critical to the commission is done, and it's actually grassed out. It's in the back of the property, but
So do you want to ask development for some money for landscaping?
that would be the only thing. If you feel like everything else is in place, I mean, like I say, I see that the drainage basin pieces are all in place, and have done everything they can, and yet I can appreciate the issue. They're just stuck
Yeah,
because of the weather.
Before we close that up,
For all we know, they might, before the passing, you would see that. in
Right.
2 weeks.
the driveway width wasn't really clear on the approved plan here. It's hard to really tell, and it looks like it's a little bigger than a 12-foot driveway now. It might be.
Do we have a letter from their engineer?
Yes, we do.
I mean, so essentially, are we certifying this as built? With a-
No, I mean,
No.
no, there'll be
Okay.
a full as-built,
Okay.
yeah.
Just the conditions
Yeah.
that they've already met,
Okay.
and you'll still be recorded on the deed until it's completely
He
done.
knows what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to take a look.
So the piece in the back, it's too bad you can't see it, but in the back where that stormwater would go, that's all finished. But you have an area along here, obviously, that still needs,
To the front, gentlemen. We have plenty of
Seats.
front here.
Front row.
Yeah, that's done.
Okay, well,
Yeah, it's a partial. I mean, we could hold some money if,
I mean, if it was
Yeah.
something critical, I mean,
Yeah.
we're not concerned about it.
if it was a final certificate request, we'd definitely be holding money. So, I don't know, what do you think, Frank?
it's fine, the only option would be that if you want to do it.
Yeah,
But
should
like
we?
you say, no, you're still leaving it
Yeah,
on the
the
deed.
CSC.
Yeah.
It's
it is.
not like it's
Still
not-
on there.
Right. Like you say, if you took it off,
Right,
then you have no leverage.
right.
Deposit.
All right, well, we'll just, issue it then? Vote to issue it?
Yep, we'll take that one.
The ravine there or something.
Let's go in
So we have to
Okay, so
vote on
we're all set, we'll sign that.
No, Pat can just
Okay.
do the,
Yeah, we just have to sign it. So that's okay. We got about 20 minutes now.
yeah. You want to do the other certificates of compliance, Pat? You have Malley at,
No,
Six-
that one we need to wait, I think, until after this presentation.
okay.
You can do the next one, Mike.
Ecotech at 227, 234 Chief Justice?
That's the spill out here?
Not out here, this is the one further down the street.
Oh, okay.
Down in PJ's, this goes back.
Oh, that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, all right.
From a couple-
Yeah, this is the final phase of it.
Oh, okay.
And Board of Health, Jen's been involved with them, and they're looking for sign up. It seems like the work's all been completed.
Quiet.
Okay, so you're good with that?
Yeah.
Scituate Realty Trust, do we want to do those orders?
Sure. This one was closed, we haven't had a vote yet on this. This is the Summer Street lot, 0 Summer Street.
I think I remember it.
We closed last meeting, and there hasn't been any new information provided to us. So it's ready
I
for
read the
vote.
orders, they look good to me.
Yeah, the thing we did add to the orders, were that because of the slope of the land, we didn't want roof runoff just going across the
Yeah.
lawn, so we added some roof infiltrators on there. And we went through the file again with Board of Health, and I went through it just to make sure that they met all the different...
Setbacks.
Yeah, all the different setbacks, and all these sources, the zone twos and all of that. And it appears that they have satisfied what they need to do, even though it's an intent to be public hearing.
Yeah, I read that today. I sent Carol a question about it, but she didn't seem to think that we needed to address that. Well, do we need to include Cohasset in terms of any notifications, or put that in the order of conditions in terms of being in communication with Cohasset?
Yeah, they, the well that they're gonna be using, they have to go through Scituate for. So, the house is located in the watershed of the Cohasset.
Right.
They have to go through the well regulations through.
Okay, so it's,
Our Board of Health.
so it'd still all be confined to
Right.
to us?
Any
Okay.
future work, they'd have to notify us and Cohasset Waterfront.
Okay.
No.
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on number 39, it says, "No tree removal shall be allowed beyond the limit of work shown on the approved plan, erosion control line. This condition shall survive the orders and be stated on a certificate of compliance in perpetuity." This is 13 acres of land, and if someone bought that house and wanted to harvest firewood or do something else, the way I read that, it says that they're not allowed to do any other work on that property.
Yeah, if they break off another lot, then that would be, they have to go through the A&R process. I hear what you're saying. I think that because of the no-touch buffer on the drinking area thing, it was pretty strict about where we hold the line on.
Well, I wonder if we can put something in there to the effect that wood could be harvested if reviewed with a forester, a registered forester, or something. I mean, it's 13 acres of land. If I own that house and I had that property, and I wanted to use some of that to either get some firewood or maybe some wood to build a building or something, I'd be looking at that and saying, seems a little too restrictive. I don't recall that we've ever put that
Right.
restrictive a piece on it. That I understand what you're saying. The applicant has said that nothing else will be developed on that piece of property.
So you could say no clearing, but selective cutting could be done with whatever
have
approval you
forestry.
want. Whatever approval you want.
Yeah, with the filing,
Yeah.
and I think we'd have to put in something about the water department, water resource protection group would have to be notified to see if it complies with all their regulations.
But that's for part of the property. This is saying the whole piece of property. Those tributaries were pretty close to the edge of the stone wall, and that line sort of came up to where the house is. I mean, there's still 10 acres of land that aren't impacted by that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out a way. I understand the piece that you're trying to implement. I'm just trying to figure out a way to not really,
Yeah, this is targeted at lawn expansion and...
Right, and that's why I said clear cutting, or, that's very
do we say,
different.
did we say that? No?
No, it just says no tree removal.
How about if we said, we state where they can't. So protect an area, and then the other area, they would be able to harvest some wood from, just as long as we state what areas they can't.
Can we just say,
I mean, the other
with
piece
prior
is,
conservation approval?
you know, they've got a fairly tight area around that house, so these trees are going to continue to grow. At some point, there may be the need to remove some trees around that house. So, this is, to me, this just seems too restrictive.
Number 39, did you say?
Yes.
Okay. You want to suggest some wording?
No clear cutting or expansion of the site, but selective tree cutting is allowed,
Proper permits?
or with approval, yeah, from whatever you want to use. If you want to say conservation, and then you can
I
look
think
at what they
that
want.
checking back with conservation
Yeah.
would kind of encompass everything, and that
Yeah.
way we could say, you know, if it's over here, yeah, if it's not, you have to check with water resources or whatever.
I mean, theoretically, I think there's enough acreage there that someone could put that in a tree farm status. So, you know, then they'd be limited to what they could do there. It's not like it's a huge forest, but,
So what would you feel comfortable with, what language?
I don't like these things.
Yeah.
We'll give Carol some ideas.
Any work that, any cutting or work that is going to be done must be done with pre-approval from Conservation Commission, somebody else.
Well, I think that if you're going to have something in here, there ought to be some decent enough verbiage so that some future commission can look back on this and say, what were these guys, what was their intent? So you could say trees could be harvested or cut for purposes of forestry purposes, protection of the house, to that, something like that.
With approval from Conservation prior to.
Yeah, or in accordance with, yeah, it's a safe forestry rules or something like that.
Yeah,
Look at the statute.
I'll come up with something close to that. Other than that, I think it's fine.
So I make a motion that we accept yours, the condition as written with an add-on there about
And I did
cutting
number 39. Yep.
on number 39.
No cutting or clearing.
No, well, no.
Yeah, with the additional language.
And is it possible, Pat, to put a notice in there that says part of this property lies within a water protection district for the town of Cohasset? I think it's probably important. I mean, someone that opened up the file could see some of that, but if it's written in the orders.
So do you
Okay,
think
so we
should
have
take?
a motion on the floor.
The second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
On this one, we should just let people know there is an appeal process to approve order of conditions, and people can contact my office. They want to know information.
Okay. So what was 32 Rear Brunswick?
That one we're going to be continuing until the 17th.
Is that,
This was a new build, and they're looking for a certificate of compliance.
okay, but we're going to hold that off. Okay.
What about the extension you want to do that on 53rd side? The ORAD?
Where is that one? Oh, yeah. A request of extension for Burke, number 50 Surfside Road. It's an ORAD.
This is the two empty lots on the opposite side of Surfside, right up against Musquashia Pond, where it was flagged a couple of years ago, I guess almost 3 years ago now, and they're looking to extend the ORAD. I mean, resource areas haven't changed. There was a question of whether there was a coastal bank there, but it's 40 vegetated wetland and then flat. So it's Gary Beach, and we've already listed that, and the wetland line for the bordering vegetation hasn't changed. So I think we could extend it further.
Well, the flood map has certainly changed, right?
Flood map has changed. I think we just called it land subject to coastal stone floor.
Okay.
We didn't put the height of
Any,
any
okay.
flood zone on
So you want a motion?
I make a motion to extend 50 Surfside Road to the old end.
A second?
Do we have to have a
For-
contract?
Is it a 3-year?
Yeah, I think you can do it 3, you could do it less, but I think you could do up to 3.
Well, let's do this here.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We still have a few more minutes to go. So, Richard's not here to update anybody on coastal advisory, but we did have another meeting and some discussion about, maybe Lisa was actually at the meeting. Since Richard's not here, do you want to update anybody at all on that? Our last coastal meeting. There's still issues, ongoing issues with Dune and the road raising in Hummerock and how to get through some of those issues. An issue of easements. We're hopeful that, given enough information, people will recognize the importance of granting an easement on that property so that those constructions can be done. That's a piece that Coastal Advisory's been working on pretty extensively. It's been the Ramsey study. And there's going to be another meeting, is that right? Is there one more?
Yeah, there's going to be another meeting.
First of June.
Some of the residents have questions as far as, like with the berm, concerned because they were told the berm's going to be 4 feet above seawalls.
I think it'll be the
easement
6th of June.
wasn't really rock solid, so there was a lot of room for interpretation, which they were looking for it to be more fine-tuned. They were also hoping that maybe there could be a mix of sand and cobble rather than just the cobble, and then what it's going to look like. And so Mr. Ramsey, in his presentation, did say that he was going to answer some of those questions that people had had in the meeting that might help make things clearer.
Okay. So it's still an ongoing process, but
It's a process.
thank you, Lisa. We're there. We don't have a clock in here, so
I know, it's strange.
there are plenty of things on our phone.
7 o'clock.
Yeah, so, so we can open this, the hearing that I think most of you are here for. If anybody wants to try to find a seat in amongst this, feel free. There might be some chairs in the closet. I'm not really-
Presentation will be over here in the
Yeah.
left-hand corner.
One of the things we're going to ask to do is we're going to pass around a sheet, and with as many people that would like to be notified by email of things going on, if you would sign in, that would help us get the word out if something's awry or whatever. So please feel free to sign in if you want some notification. When we're done, when we're closing today, this more than likely will be continued, and you'll know a date for a future meeting as well. On May 3rd, 2017, at 7 p.m. at the Public Safety Complex in the Emergency Operations Center, located at 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, Scituate, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700 Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Toll Mass Land 3 Limited Partnership. I get that right? CO Toll Brothers, Inc., to build a 142-unit age-restricted townhouse plus 10 single-family dwellings on property located on Hatherley Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening. I'd just like to say a couple of quick things about this. This is a wetlands hearing, so as we proceed into this, the issues or topics for tonight, we'd like to primarily stick to wetlands related issues. We know that there'll be lots of hearings on this project. There'll be hearings in front of the planning board, other agencies that will be dealing with things like traffic and roadways, buildings, things like that. But for this evening, this is a wetlands hearing, and so that's what we're going to start out with. what we'll do is the applicant will make their presentation, and then members of the board will have the opportunity to ask some questions, our agent, and then we'll look for comments and questions from folks in the audience. And the hope is to have everyone that wants to ask or speak have the opportunity to do that. If somebody can't hear or doesn't understand, let us know, and we'll try to do the best we can to make sure that that's clear. Okay. And I also personally just want to make sure that I make this clear. I am represented from time to time by Ornberger and Associates, the attorneys that are representing Toll Brothers. I don't do anything for Toll Brothers, but that in working and serving in a town, the state of Massachusetts and the Ethics Commission recognize that can happen, and there's a process for doing that. And what I do is I notify the appointing authority for our commission, in this case it's the selectmen, and I give them written notice, and they recognize it at a public meeting that occurs. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that as well.
When we do get to the open forum part, all the questions get directed to the chair, and then the chair will direct the questions, so there's no shouting back and forth, etc. Hopefully there's no shouting at all. But everything gets directed to Frank here, and then we'll direct it to the Toll Brothers group. Today is primarily informational gathering. As Frank said, there's going to be a lot of steps after this, and there will be some overlapping jurisdictions with us, with the state, with planning, but we'll figure it out as we go.
Mr. Ornberger?
Yeah, but just Bill Ornberger, and I'm just going to introduce everyone who's here tonight. And on behalf of the Toll Brothers, to my right is Dave Bauer, who's the division president. I have over there Scott Michelli, who's our engineer, and Dave Buckley, who's the senior project manager. In addition to that, next to me on my left is Mark Manganello from LEC, who's our environmental scientist, Kevin Klein from Stantec, Jim Ash at GEI Consultants, who's right there, and also Paul Marabito, our engineer from Ross Engineering over there. At the outset, just very briefly, we're here tonight seeking an order of conditions and also for stormwater review and permit. Mark is going to make a presentation to get into all of the substantive issues relating to this. As the chairman already said, we're also going to be appearing before the planning board for a special permit that's going to address a lot of issues that are non-issues for the Conservation Commission. Dave Bauer, at the outset, just wants a very brief overview of the project, just as we're starting out as our first public meeting.
Sure. And if you're more comfortable standing, the camera's actually up here, so it's looking at the back of your head. So whether you want to, whether you guys would prefer to stand over here or do that, I think when we get ready to put up the easel and the plans, we'll probably try to pick a spot right here.
Yeah, as long as the plans are facing this direction.
Sure.
Okay. Good evening. Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Bauer. I'm the division president for Toll Brothers Massachusetts Division. I'm a resident of Westford, Massachusetts. Just very quickly, we are a national home building company. This year marks our 50th anniversary, and we've been operating in Massachusetts for 30 years. We are a public company, national home builder, but we operate very locally. I'm a resident of Massachusetts, Dave Buckley, resident of Massachusetts, our entire right down to the folks that set foot on the site and the people that swing the hammers. We contract our trades locally. We work with local consultants. So we very much are experienced and knowledgeable and sensitive to local issues. So I just wanted to make that clear. Another thing is we are home builders. We're not developers. We're not property flippers. We build houses and deliver those homes to our customers. So I think that's important to highlight because everything we do is keeping in mind that we have to deliver a home to the end user. We don't just come in and get an approval to go off and sell it to somebody else. So a lot of the decisions we make about a project plan, And the types of homes we're going to build is very much focused on what the market wants. And to that end, we were here a couple years ago with a plan for 90 single-family homes. And we went to some meetings, and we had a neighborhood meeting to get feedback from the abutters in the neighborhood. We've been before the town with that plan. A lot of different feedback came out of that. One of the, a couple of the big comments were impact on the schools, impact to the town in terms of tax implications and cost of services, and then a lot of engineering things that you'll hear about some of them tonight. But we took away that feedback. We worked very hard over, now it's been a couple of years, and we decided to make a dramatic change in the concept. And we've decided to change it to a 55 and over, predominantly a 55 and over townhome community, which does not allow school-age children, and is really focused on satisfying that demand for downsizing empty nesters. And that's something that we have a lot of experience in Massachusetts. We have several communities we've built over the past, over the recent years, so we really understand that market. There's a lot of demand out there for it. And then we happen to have 10 single-family homes around the perimeter of the community. So we're going to attend all the meetings to be able to answer any questions related to the decisions we've made about the development, the houses we build, or anything to that end. So if you have any questions along the way, we'll be available to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have to look them all over right now?
Sorry?
I understand you guys have gone through some gyrations to make sure they're all here.
Yes, that's for sure. So once again, just for the record, my name is Mark Manganello. I'm a wetland scientist with LEC Environmental Consultants. The planning for this project began in 2014, at which time we started to evaluate the site and to delineate wetland resource areas on the property. Once the resource areas were delineated and surveyed, we filed an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation with the Conservation Commission seeking approval of the wetland boundaries on the property. The Commission hired a peer reviewer at that time to review our wetland delineation, and ultimately we made a few modifications and agreed to the boundaries, and the Commission issued an order of resource area delineation approving all the wetland boundaries on the property in October of 2014. That order is valid for 3 years, so for the purposes of the notice of intent, the wetland boundaries are approved and there's no further action necessary on that point. The wetlands themselves on the property include bordering vegetated wetlands, isolated vegetated wetlands, bank associated with an intermittent stream, there's a vernal pool, there's coastal bank, and there is land subject to coastal storm flowage. Starting with bordering vegetated wetlands, there's a large bordering vegetated wetland system located on the southern portion of the property here, two smaller areas along Harrison Road to the north, and then to the east of Hadley Road there's a larger bordering vegetated wetland system as well. There are several non-bordering wetlands or isolated vegetated wetlands on the property. I'll talk a little bit about the jurisdictional difference between bordering and non-bordering in a moment, but those are located here in blue, scattered throughout the property. Yes.
Could you
Turn it a little bit.
So I know they can see, I can see.
You can keep that.
Yeah, I'm still good. Is that better?
Yeah, can you see, Lisa?
Not really. Could you, if you could move a little to the right and set it back, then I think we all could see it.
Pull the whole
Go to the
cube
right, no, the other way.
To the right.
The other right, our right. Go left, good, and then,
No, let's
good.
get John is getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now everybody can see? Yep.
Can you see, Lisa?
Yeah. Thank you.
Could you just delineate the map orientation for everybody?
Oh, sure, this is North Arrow right here. So here's Hatherley Road here, Tilden Road here. Okay, and so the property extends east of Hatherley Road down to Oceanside Drive, includes a few parcels along Oceanside Drive, and then extends to Longley Drive to the north, behind Ermine Road, excuse me, and then over toward Irving Road here. This is the school building, Wampatuck School right here.
And the lower part is Marion Road Extension.
Correct, yes. So we have freshwater wetlands, which I pointed out, and then coastal wetlands. Land subject to coastal storm flowage is coincident with the coastal floodplain. If the inland determined 100-year floodplain is protected as a resource area, that's delineated, extends through this area here. And coastal bank similarly extends along the top of the slope that I'm sure everyone's familiar with. It extends from this marsh up toward the site, or the developed portion of the site. Regarding the jurisdictional classification of the wetlands, bordering vegetated wetlands contain a stream, a water body of some sort. That's what they border on. That makes them protectable under the State Wetlands Protection Act regulations and the local bylaw. Isolated wetlands don't border on any water body, so the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act does not protect them. The local bylaw does protect them. They may also be protected federally in the Water Act. However, in this case, we petitioned the Army Corps of Engineers, who is responsible for administering the Clean Water Act, and they determined that the isolated vegetated wetlands are non-jurisdictional under the Clean Water Act. So this is an important point, I think, for the Commission's review, because we are proposing to fill some of these isolated wetlands, and we believe that several of them are of low quality, and that's one of the reasons the Army Corps of Engineers did not take jurisdiction over them. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So regarding the low quality of some of these wetlands, just to give an example, I think everyone's familiar with the history of this site, at least to some extent. There's extensive portions of this site that have been disturbed as a result of historic industrial use on the property. There is a lot of forested upland on the property as well, in some areas that have regenerated over time. But for example, this wetland that we delineated here actually formed in a depression where there are railroad tracks. So there are old railroad tracks from the historic use of the property, and it's a lower lying area. A wetland formed once the railroad tracks were abandoned, and so it is a wetland, but it's degraded as a result of the historic use of the property. Similarly, this small linear isolated wetland looks like it was the result of installation of utilities from Hatherley Road out to the site. Someone dug a trench a long time ago, backfilled it. It was low enough in elevation that it started to grow wetland plants, so it's a wetland. But again, not a very high value wetland in comparison to some of the bordering vegetated wetlands on the property. So on to the project itself. It's 142 units as described, plus 10 single-family units. The 142 units are located between Hatherley Road and Tilden Road on that portion of the site. The 10 single-family dwellings are located on the east side of Hatherley Road here, just to the north of 6th Avenue, and then there's one on Longley Road. There will be a system of internal roadways to provide access to each of the units. They're in 3 or 4 unit buildings, clusters of units within individual buildings. There's a clubhouse proposed here with some recreational amenities for the residents. The roadways will be private, and the clubhouse and other amenities will be managed by a homeowners association. Dave mentioned that this is an age-restricted development, 55 and older, so that's an important point as well. That the sewer for the project will extend from 6th Avenue along the rear of the single-family dwellings on Hatherley Road, and then cross Hatherley Road, providing sewer access to the development. And each of the single-family dwellings will tie into that as well. The project includes a stormwater management system. It's been designed in compliance with DEP stormwater management standards. Stantec provided a stormwater management report which provides drainage calculations to support the design. It's also been designed in compliance with the local stormwater bylaw. Kevin from Stantec is here to answer any questions about stormwater. So on to wetland impacts associated with the project itself. As I mentioned, there are several isolated wetlands that will be filled as part of the project. They total 7,348 square feet. Those are the ones highlighted in blue on this plan. As mitigation for that disturbance, we proposed 15,000 square feet of wetland replication. That's located in the vicinity of a bordering vegetated wetlands on the southern portion of the property, where there's an existing roadway that passes through the wetland. We're going to remove the roadway, excavate the material beneath if it's unsuitable, backfill it with suitable wetland soil, and plant it with wetland vegetation to create a more cohesive, larger, contiguous vegetated wetland in the southern portion of the property. We've also proposed 70,000 square feet of buffer zone restoration. This shows the wetland replication as well as the buffer zone restoration. So the wetland replication, this is the footprint of the existing roadway. Tilden Road is here. So this roadway will be removed and connected to the wetlands that are located on either side of it here. And this larger hatched area here will be restored. There's an existing building here presently, pavement, and just generally a previously disturbed area that's going to be restored for buffer zone enhancement purposes. That's as mitigation for some disturbance in the 50-foot buffer zone to a wetland associated with the project, which totals just over 20,000 square feet. But again, we have 70,000 square feet of buffer zone restoration as mitigations. There's some temporary disturbance to wetlands associated with the project as well. There's a sewer line that's going to cross a narrow portion of the BBW here that will result in a small temporary impact. There are some trailers presently parked in the wetland in one location. They're going to be removed. That will result in some temporary disturbance. And then there's some soil removal that's to occur that will result in temporary disturbance. What we propose detailed planting plans for restoration of each of those areas and expect them to be fully functional within 2 years of that work being complete. So that's an overview of the project. I think at this point I'll turn it over to the commission.
You going to talk about the vertical?
Oh, thank you. Yes. Vernal pool is located over here at the corner of Irving and Tilden Road, and we've maintained a 125-foot setback to that in accordance with the bylaw requirements. So there's no direct disturbance to that, and we've maintained the setback to that vernal pool with the project.
Penny, would you like to start?
Yes, there is also 250 setback on that vernal pool, and it's in our jurisdiction. It's not in practice, it's 125, but it is still within our jurisdiction. And looking at this, one of your storm water basins, 3/4 of it is within the 250-foot.
Yeah, that would be this one here.
Yeah, that one up here. So, is there any hope for getting that farther out? Because, let's face it, when you do storm water basins, there's going to be quite a bit of disturbance to create them. And then, hopefully, Mother Nature will come back and do her thing.
Yeah.
You know, but that was one thing that stuck out to me. And we have the same thing over here by units 37 through 40, where you have I'm not sure, I can't read because my print's so small. If it's isolated or a BBW.
That's
But,
isolated, that one.
all right, because, once again, your stormwater basin, it's within the 50, a little bit of it, and a third is in the 100. So there's a few spots where I wish they were completely out of the stormwater basins, were out of both buffer zones. You know, like the Basin B, I think it is, up near where you're gonna do, your replication. I don't see why it couldn't be completely moved out, because there's just a little bit of it in. And the same thing with, the one below it, that they're just feet within it. It would be nice just to have them out, because, like I said, when you go to build them, you are going to get deeper ends with the equipment. So I just, and it looks like, you know, this space behind those houses. Suggestions at the
We
moment.
can take a look at that.
Yeah. Okay, at the moment, I guess that was my biggest one. And once again, over with 5 through 8 units, you got a stormwater basin between 2 wetlands, and you're almost taking a corner, or one side of 5 is in the 100-foot buffer. So it's just something to look at, to try and preserve. We know you have to preserve the 50, but the closer you can get to preserving the 100, it would make us happy.
Okay.
Okay, Bill?
Well, some of my questions are procedural here, because we have a lot of things to talk about. Like, one of the things, obviously, is stormwater. And are we going to address that later on, or?
Yeah, we'll address it in this presentation, Kevin.
Okay.
Klein is here.
Yeah, to some degree. I think that some of the stormwater is going to be worked with the planning board
Right.
as well.
Yeah,
so-
but I just want to get kind of what our general game plan is, so people have an understanding of how that's going to get addressed in general. The other thing is, are we going to talk about DEP soil testing, how you came to the conclusions that you've come to, and where we are currently with this?
Yeah, to the extent Jim Ash can speak to that also.
Okay, all right.
This fellow's just putting
Oh, so we're kind of holding our questions just to this piece of the presentation? Is that what we're doing? Is that how we're?
If any questions that you
Okay.
have, feel free to
All right.
put them out there.
All right.
As long as we're trying to stay within the parameters of what
Yep.
our overview
Now,
is.
do we have remediation that we've already agreed to theoretically, or is that, I mean?
You're talking about hazardous waste remediation?
No, just in general. I mean, have we, as a town, or come to some agreement with doing anything up to this point? Do we?
What do you mean by remediation?
Well, I heard you guys talking
Oh,
about.
you mean replication?
Yeah, no, remediation in terms of, I heard somebody talking about it when we were at the Barker Tavern, about doing some work on Egypt Beach.
Oh,
And that type of
you
thing,
need to do some,
Yeah, I mean, have we-
to do some public enhancements.
Yeah, have we already come to some understandings on that, or is that
No,
still?
That's a work in progress.
Okay.
That's going to be probably addressed at the planning board level and also.
Okay,
the select.
so the planning board's kind of driving that, all right, okay. Now, as far as water is concerned for the project, how does that work? Where is the water coming from, and is that already permitted?
You mean, yes.
Yeah, drinking water.
Yes, the water and sewer, the selectmen of the Water and Sewer Commissioners and the water and sewer adequate for this project has already been approved.
Okay, so, yeah, I was aware of what we come to the conclusion with the sewer. I didn't know what we were doing with water, okay. Now, there is going to be some overlap with the zoning in the cluster district, because planning has that, but also there's some environmental impact to RCs. So I think there'll be some back and forth with us and the planning on that,
With
right?
regard to the stormwater?
Well, an environmental impact in the residential cluster districts.
one of the things that and again, it's sort of a work in process, we're going to be discussing a number of these things with the planning board, working in conjunction with the planning board. Obviously, as we move forward, there'll be different considerations, maybe some things will be moving around in the plan, and then we'll have to revisit those. But I think if we try to focus on what we have for an application tonight and look at those areas and then move forward as we go along.
If I can just speak to that for a minute,
Sure.
Chairman? Yeah, one of the outsets, the way the sequencing is processed, because we recognize the fact that the Wetlands Protection Act drives a lot of structurally how this is done, and that's why Mark and Kevin have looked at all these things. So at the outset, we want to make sure that we're on solid ground, we're addressing all the Wetlands Protection Act issues with the commission before you get to planning board issues, because it doesn't do us any good to agree to do certain things on a planning board basis and to be told that there's an issue. So it is a collaborative process that we make sure that all the issues, not only the zoning issues, and as you may or may not be aware, under a special permit criteria under the town bylaw, there's reference virtually to every single department and board for them, which they'll all hold public hearings, and to weigh in on whether it's Board of Health, DPW, police, fire, you name it, myriad departments. So there's going to be input from everyone along those lines.
And I think that's why it's important as a commission that we look at the pieces that we have jurisdiction over and address those first. And again, they're going to be moving some folks that have all kinds of questions. It would be nice to have, in some ways, something as a whole meeting where everybody could get that out, but the reality is that meeting would go on for weeks. So it's broken up into purview of different committees. We serve on the Conservation Commission, and those are the things that we should be tackling this evening and in the future.
Well, all right, in reference to the stormwater thing, you know, I want to make sure that whoever gets it and whoever's driving the process,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, it's a matter of fact, maybe it's a little bit disjunctive. Kevin, why don't you, so we get all the information out before the questions become, why isn't Kevin going to talk about stormwater right now? So in other words, you can look at it in conjunction with the wetlands.
Okay. But I also am very interested in the, you know, the RAO and how we came to the, you know, the sampling methods and talking about that.
Oh,
You know, so
then after
everybody
he
explains
speaks,
that.
let
Yeah.
Jim will speak to that also.
Right.
And then I think you have all the information out for the questions, okay?
Yeah. You're over there.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Klein with Stantec Consulting Services. We were tasked with looking at the stormwater, and I believe that the stormwater is actually in your jurisdiction and the planning board. We've prepared a stormwater report, about 3.5 inches thick, that you've all got a copy of, the planning board will all get a copy of, and I believe that you're going to have the same consultant review and the planning board hopefully reviewing it all. The stormwater report, what we do on the stormwater is there's the state stormwater requirements, and then there's also Scituate stormwater requirements. The Scituate are more stringent than the state. The state requires us to look at the site, pre-existing conditions, post-development conditions, and make sure that we don't increase the rate of flow off the site in any location. Scituate takes that a step further. Says you can't increase the rate or the volume. So we looked at this site, went out, took a look at the existing uses out there, how much is impervious, how much is trees, what type of soils you've got, where you've got wetlands, where you've got all your different drainage basins, and we modeled how much was going into each and every one of them, and then how much was going off-site. And we found there's many locations where stormwater leaves the site. The biggest ones are Hatherley Road at the north, Tilghman Road at the southwest, there's some more over Hatherley Road to the south, and then there's flow to the east. We looked at that for the existing conditions. We then went for proposed conditions. And again, looked at how we were going to change the land, how it was going to affect the flow of water, and then design the system so that we do not increase flow or volume, flow rate or volume at any of the discharge locations. And by doing that, in order to do that, what we did is a series of 7 stormwater basins on the site, on the main portion of the site. And then on the eastern portion of the site is more overland flow, but the increased volume due to the impervious on the east is offset by removal of pavement. So we're removing impervious in order to build the houses. There's existing roadways through here that are on the site that are coming out. So with the modeling, we went out and then looked at ways to mitigate this, ways to keep it from increasing volume. And what we were able to do is decrease the volume and the flow rate at all locations. In addition to that, we then went back and looked at all of the wetlands. We wanted to make sure that we're trying to recharge the groundwater, but also trying to not throw extra flow to the wetlands. All of our basins have got overflows. Most of them don't overflow, but we've got them in there anyhow. That could overflow in a 100-year storm, 3 or 4 of the basins to the existing wetlands. So we wanted to make sure we don't increase flows to the wetlands. And in all cases, we're actually at the same or decreased. Because a lot of these basins, especially this wetland right here, used to be an old stormwater basin. You walk down, you can just see it. It's an old basin. So we want to make sure that we're not increasing anything, any flow to that. In doing the modeling, we used very conservative inputs. We went out and did a series of test pits and double ring infiltrometers in each of the test pits at high level, at high elevation and at deeper depths. We put standpipes in a lot of these to determine groundwater, because we found modeling, and some of them fairly shallow, but we're out doing test pits and finding no water at 10 or 15 feet. So we put the standpipes in there, because that modeling is maybe groundwater. Well, it is. Groundwater fluctuates greatly out there. So we're using the high points of that. When we did our stormwater, the double ring infiltrometer testing, we were getting rates of 3/4 of an inch per hour to 1 or 2 inches per hour, which is fairly slow, which is why our basins are fairly large. But then we went even more conservative, and we said the soils out there were kind of a silt loam. So we did all of our infiltration basins sized on a 0.27 inch per hour rate. That way, making sure we've got enough in here that the stormwater gets into the basin. It's a 24-hour storm. We modeled it for 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storm. At the end of that 24 hours, the stormwater's in there. It has to drain in 72 hours. So we had made sure that these are big enough that even with the conservative infiltration rates, that they'll drain. That's essentially what we've done for stormwater. We've decreased the offsite, especially right up here at the north site on Heatherly, north part. Stormwater right now flows through the wetlands and overflows on the street. So we put our basins and we've got it so that we're actually decreasing the flow to that location. Similarly, we got a decrease in flow down here, but that's less critical. And we can always look at, as we're doing the basins, because we've got the overflows, if we look at it and conservation says, we're decreasing a little bit of flow to the wetlands, we can adjust the basin volumes and basin heights that we can mimic, the idea is get it as close to natural as we can without increasing flow.
When you do your modeling, you do the modeling for the whole project,
Yes.
obviously. But you build incrementally. You build kind of to order, more or less, right? So how does stormwater get reflected in the incremental phases? So theoretically, we're approving a stormwater for the entire project, but will the stormwater be completed when the first segment is completed, or how does that work as you go along? You understand the question?
Yes.
Okay.
It most likely will not all be completed when the first segment goes in. But if the first area is here, any areas that the disturbed work will contribute flow to, will have the stormwater basins installed, so protection for them. So we may not build the back one. We'll build anything that we're building, so we keep up the stormwater, keep up with the stormwater as we do construction.
So That's exactly the question. So as we're doing construction, stormwater along those same guidelines will be in place to take care of whatever's being done. Great.
Anybody else want to?
Do you want to hear from Jim Ash first?
Probably. I think everybody would like to elaborate on that a little bit, so we might as well do that.
Sure. My name is Jim Ash, with GEI Consultants. I am a licensed site professional. It's a designation to look at things under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan Environmental Regulations. Toll Brothers hired me to essentially do a peer review of all the previous investigation work that had been done on this property over the past more than 20 years. There have been a series of investigations done by different parties, former owner, including some soil removal of contaminated soil and debris in a portion of the property that had been used by the previous manufacturing process. I'll start by saying that I've done a very thorough review of all the work that's been done. In my opinion, there has been a very comprehensive evaluation of contaminant conditions at the property associated with historical uses. So they had achieved what's called a response action outcome statement, an REO in the parlance of the MCP, which means they achieved site closure under the Massachusetts regulations in 2011 under the previous ownership. Toll Brothers came in and hired another environmental consultant to essentially review that and collect additional soil samples across much of the property, even test pits in the back 40 of the property that had not been used for industrial purposes. And they collected many dozens of additional soil samples. They found contaminant conditions in a few places that were consistent with what had already been encountered and reported by the previous consultant, but in a few places they exceed residential standards. So Toll Brothers has included in their plans to remove soil in 3 places. I don't have a good figure showing it here. This might be best.
It's a phase 1 study?
The one I was referring to is called an ASTM Phase 2. That refers to the fact that they collected soil samples. In that area, again, here's the harbor, Hatherley Road, Tilden Road. This was the area where the manufacturing buildings and former federal buildings were constructed. There's an area right here, 2 small areas in the vicinity of the buildings where they're proposing additional excavation to remove those contaminants that exceeded the residential standards. And then also a portion on the opposite side of Hatherley Road where lead and PAH is associated with lead and ash from the burning of the former buildings was present. It's actually an exempt condition under the MCP, but nevertheless, Toll Brothers is removing that soil as part of this development. That work will be done under MCP requirements, meaning there does actually have to be a report filed with the DEP. That report, under the regulations, current regulations, have to be also provided to the town manager and the Board of Health. So there will be an opportunity to see the controls that the LSP will try to put on during the project.
My understanding is that this type of sampling allows you to clear the entire site, but sample just in the area you assume to be contaminated. Is that correct?
I think I understand your question. The process for evaluating a property like this is 2 phases. As it's been done for many manufacturing properties, first step is to evaluate how the property was used historically. So you look for the locations where there were manufacturing processes, where there were structures, where there might have been disposal areas, and then to focus your sampling on those areas that represent the highest risk. Essentially doing broadcast sampling over a broad undeveloped area is, looking for a straw in a haystack. So that additional evaluation of likely locations is the first step. And that had been done, actually by more than one consultant, frankly. I think there were 4 or 5 different field investigations on this property. And even after closure, I mentioned that Toll Brothers hired CHA to do that work, which included test pits throughout the property for the purposes of evaluating infiltration and that sort of thing. But they also had the opportunity to look for evidence of potential fill material on other portions of the property, and found none. So that process of evaluating first where there's fill, where there are manufacturing operations, and then collecting samples in those locations has been done thoroughly several times.
Let me clarify that. So has the rest of the property, not the concentrated area, but has the rest of the property been randomly sampled for environmental hazard material?
No, it has not been randomly sampled. It has been observed in the field, but the actual chemical sampling has only been conducted within the site boundary, the MCP site boundary,
Right.
which is actually a fairly broad portion.
So the logical question here is, how do we come to a feeling that we're comfortable with the rest of the site not having anything of concern on it?
So that first step of evaluating where the bulk of the manufacturing operations historically took place, and that has been evaluated. The second step, which was done after site closure actually, was when CHA, on behalf of Toll Brothers, went out and did a more thorough field investigation, field observations, not sampling, not testing, but nevertheless broke the surface. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm scared.
They conducted test pits, with equipment to observe soil conditions, even in those areas outside the site boundary. And what we would be looking for in those situations is evidence of debris, fill, kind of like the debris disposal area that was found over here and cleaned up back in 2002.
So you're saying that with that process, potential hazardous material would have become evidenced?
That's correct.
Is there an area of this site that has not been done or taken into account for?
Well, the test pitting operation, I don't have a figure that I could put up in front of you, but it does include those stops pretty much thoroughly over the entire property. Now, granted, they are, it's a, 100-acre property, and so, the distance between them is hundreds of feet. But nevertheless, there has been a fairly comprehensive evaluation of conditions outside of even the area.
Can I ask Mark the question?
Sure, but one thing I just want to, Jim, was there groundwater testing also?
Yeah, there has been soil, groundwater, sediment sampling done, multiple monitoring wells. I guess that's one of the punchlines I left out, is there have never been any contaminant conditions encountered in groundwater above even drinking water standards.
Explain that to me in terms of depth. So groundwater goes down from the surface, how far?
I didn't memorize that one, but my recollection is it's within 10 feet of ground surface, but it ranges in depth. In some locations, low areas, it's, within a couple of feet of the ground surface. In other areas that are higher, it may be as much as 10 feet below ground surface.
So from your professional opinion, that given that it takes that much of surface, earth surface into account, that anything that we're monitoring downstream, if there was a contaminant upstream, you would have found it in the downstream collection area?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the contaminants that were found in soil are relatively insoluble. In other words, they don't dissolve into the water phase. It's hard to say that any contaminant is benign, but as contaminant conditions go, these are relatively benign.
And then anything below that groundwater would not be of a concern? Anything below that level?
Correct.
Yeah.
So these contaminants are present in soil, they're not dissolving into groundwater, so they're not going, they're not in a position where they can migrate off-site or down gradient under other people's properties. That condition just doesn't exist here.
Well, I want to get a couple of more members, and then I want to make sure we have an opportunity to open this up to folks in the audience. I know there's a lot of questions, and again, this won't be the last time we'll get to ask these. Anybody else from your group want to speak?
No, I think that's it. Bill, did you have a question for Mark?
Well, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Penny?
Jim Ash.
Jim. This is probably, as you know, everyone's biggest concern is contamination, okay? So, when you go out there, and I'm assuming that you're gonna basically clear cut the bill, would there be possibilities, like, I guess it's the northwest corner, over off of Tilden, 73 back to 60 in that section. Would there be the opportunity to do more soil testing? I think that's the biggest concern of people, is that stuff was put in different spots on the site that we haven't even seen yet, that we do it probably find some barrels and so forth and so on in the site. Now, would that be a possibility if you find stuff when you start?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
to test those soils before.
So if, during the course of the work, more debris was found, that
Right.
several drums were found in an area that had been vegetated and weren't obvious to anyone,
Right.
it would be appropriate in those locations then to collect samples in the vicinity of those things. It's the random sampling that I think that's not appropriate. Certainly if a new condition were encountered, it would be appropriate to evaluate that and consider.
What is the reporting criteria for that? Does that get reported to the state or locally?
If something is found,
Yes.
if a contaminant condition is found that hasn't been reported before, it's outside that site boundary, there would be a new reporting condition to the state DEP.
David Bauer with Toll Brothers. I think it's important just to offer the perspective again. As I said before, we deliver to a customer at the end of the day. We don't want to take ownership of a property where we feel a year from now we're going to say, uh-oh. So we actually had the opportunity to not do a single test. And we had not Jim, but another consultant with the same credibility to certify to us, you're good to go. You don't need to test anything. And we've done all this additional testing because we don't want that surprise. But without a doubt, if we get out there and we put a bucket in the ground and something comes up, it's in our vested interest also to understand what that is.
Well, I think that's a big concern of people here, that in past, when we were doing the ORAD, people were very concerned. When you didn't go here, I can take you to a spot with the barrels and blah, blah, blah.
So we feel very confident that the testing we've done at this point is more than adequate. So when we might get asked, will you go do some more testing, just because that it feels, more safe. When we say no to that, and we don't want it to come off like we're unwilling to go test, the point we're trying to make is we went off and did that ourselves so that we had that level of comfort.
But if you find something, you definitely will investigate.
Without a doubt, because we need to know that we're delivering to a customer something that, is okay.
Paul, do you want to,
I don't have any questions right now.
Lisa?
No, I'd rather give it up to the floor to ask.
Pat, do you want to add anything before we start with the audience?
Just to get back to wetlands, I think the next step that conservation is going to do is we're going to walk the wetlands that Mark had shown out there. Some of the work is right up against a wetland, and then some isolated ones that they would build. So we'll walk that with Mark, commission members, and we'll also be working with a wetland consultant who has more expertise than any of us, similar to Mark's professional wetland scientist, to see if a wetland is planned to be filled actually is of no value. So it's not just relying on the application from the applicant, we're going to be walking it with someone else who's a peer reviewer. As far as stormwater, there's quite a document there, we'll be reviewing that, it's going to be under planning board because this all falls under a residential cluster district. If anybody wants to see what this is described at in the town zoning manual here. We also full set of plans and conservation, just like what you're saying up there, if anybody wants to come to our office and look at it, we have wetland reports, so there's a lot of information when you see. The one last thing is from the earlier time that Toll Brothers was out there, we made comments about the size of the stormwater retention basins. They look like these big giant basins that would be filled with water. And we worked with their engineer, with our engineer, maybe separate those, spread them around the property a little bit. And it looks like that's what the plan is. I think it's, if you have a failure and it's a big one, you're in a lot of trouble. If you have them separated all around the property, I think it's better for the neighborhood and better for the project. So, but the next two things are more than stormwater and wetland review.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to open it up to the audience, and maybe you can put up your hand, and then we'll just work from one side and go from there. Yes, sir.
Hi, Patrick Conroy, Ring Road.
Go, your address again?
33 Ring Road. So my...
We want to make sure Carol can just get that.
Oh, I'm sorry. My question has to do with the reports that are done. Soil sampling, I understand that all those commissioned CHA and the interact with the review. Are those available to the public in any way for us also to deal with?
The MCP reporting that's been done on property by the previous owner, that is actually all available on DEP's website. There's, you know,
That's DEP searchable site list.
Yeah, there you go. And you can search it by town and then by street name and property owner. So you can find all of those documents that were submitted up until 2011 online. That's the easiest way. The report by CHA that was done by Toll Brothers was not submitted to the DEP. That's something that was done on your behalf. So to the extent that you would have made that available, you know, that could be reviewed by request from Toll Brothers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm Patricia Lambert, 14 Alexander Place. With all due respect, and this refers back to Mrs. Pike's responses, how do we know when you're covered something? Who's there to watch to say that this could be dangerous? I mean, your project manager is there, you know that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear everything.
If you want to run something,
Yeah.
how do we as a general populace know that you want to run something? We have to rely on the integrity of Toll Brothers and the project manager. We just want some assurance that that will happen.
Yeah. Well, there are actually, you know, the laws of Massachusetts require that if information about a potential release to the environment is encountered, they have a legal obligation to evaluate that. So that's essentially the role of the LSP. My job is to protect the health and welfare of the people of Massachusetts, even though I would be hired by Toll Brothers if I were their LSP. So there's an obligation when you encounter those conditions that I have an obligation to tell them about the potential for contaminant condition and that they have an obligation to report it. And there are even timelines, requirements for the type of condition ranging from 2 hours notification requirement up to 120 days.
The other thing that I spent a little time looking at this as well and trying to understand the role of an LSP, and we're going to have, one of the pieces that was left out here is the town will also have a consultant for this project. I think we're on a larger firm that will be able to encompass all the different aspects, whether it's the environmental, the stormwater, the traffic, all those sort of things. But a piece with an LSP, a licensed site professional in the state, my understanding is that if they do not do their job, and it's found that they didn't do that, it's not only a monetary fine, but there's actually criminal pieces that go along with that.
Well,
it's a pretty serious...
Absolutely. I mean, criminal stuff is pretty rare.
Right.
But fortunately. But I do have an obligation under my license to protect human health and welfare of the state. If I don't do that, I can lose my license and my livelihood.
Right.
So I don't have, as an LSP, just a paid obligation to my client just to do whatever they say. I have an obligation to the state under my license to do those things.
And this is a program that the state has established to do this. I mean, not that we don't all want to keep an eye on it, but it's a process that...
And the state audits those reports periodically. So they will review reports periodically, and if they have questions about something, they will notify the owner and me to evaluate further.
Go ahead.
Just a quick add-on to that, because I think the spirit of the question is when Jim's not there and it's a random Tuesday and we're out building houses, where's the control? And one thing I would add is that all 142 customers get disclosures from us that are not required by law, but as a company, we choose to make these disclosures. All of this environmental topic and history will be disclosed to our customers in writing. So we'll be making a representation in writing to 142 clients, and we take that very seriously. So it really, it's in our best interest to make sure we get out ahead of anything that we might uncover if we do uncover anything.
I just want to underscore something that Frank said a little bit earlier. So just so everybody knows that we hire, a firm is hired to check all of these facts and figures, all of these things at an independent firm. So all of these things that are being revealed to us now will have another checks and balances as we go on above and beyond the expertise of this board, this Cranford Jack board.
Woman in the back.
Veronica Kent, 189 Hadley Road. And I mean no disrespect to Toll Brothers or you, Mr. Ash, but many years ago, 2005, Christine, my friend Christine and I had found pictures of barrels rotting in the wetlands there with, the tagged wetlands flags that had been stepped over. Nobody did anything about it. We brought the pictures to DEP, which then ended in an immediate response action and a warrant went on the property. So as far as the town consultant, is there someone there every day, or is this just a paper review? I mean, really, where is the assurance that this will really happen?
Okay.
I mean, have you ever walked the property?
Yes.
I have.
As a matter of fact,
We've been on it a lot.
later in the vernal pool. Yeah.
So this will be a piece that we discuss with the developer. This phased construction, how are things going to go forward, checking to make sure that the pollution is addressed, or potential pollution. I mean, if you go back on the history of this, and I appreciate what you're saying, that there's places that may have not been looked at, but there's also a pretty long history going back with our former building inspector, looking at when Pulte Holmes was here. There's been a number of consultants that have looked and then re-looked at this property, and it will continue to happen. The consultant that the town has will be talking and negotiating with the developer as to how some of these things are reviewed, to be sure that we're safe. I've served on this long enough and a lot of confidence that people at all levels will look at this, but I don't think there's anything better than the people that are at a local level to really take the interests of Scituate to heart. So we want to make sure that happens as well.
And is an over 55 community the same threshold as a community where you're going to build individual homes where families are going to live, or?
A threshold for
Wetlands?
There's different things as far as,
Yeah, the standards are the same, yes, ma'am.
Let's do that to it. Sure, that one right here, then I'll work. Sure. And your name, sir?
I'm Jonathan Holden, 1711 Down. My daughter goes to Wampatuck, and which abuts the property. And I know we've all talked about the sampling. My biggest concern, of course, is during construction, when things do pick up that are going right across the floor. And it's a great concern, having seen plenty of kids who are going through a variety of crises. I'm not saying it's caused by the contaminants, but when you see it, it's devastating. So we want to know that our children, who are right there, are protected. And I see that the sampling, the random sampling, isn't completely comprehensive. And I haven't looked at any of the documents, and I was unclear about how much has been released. You said the 2011 documents were, but Toll Brothers study is not available?
Well, can I answer that?
Yes, please.
So the Toll Brothers project by CHA wasn't done under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. It wasn't submitted to DEP, so you can't find it on the website. So all the previous reports up to 2011, when that regulatory closure document was filed, those are available on the DEP website. And it's only the CHA report that was done more recently, directly from Toll Brothers, that is not available from the website, but could be made available by Toll Brothers.
But it's not, I can't see it.
Yeah, it's not on a website. I don't know how.
We have a takeaway to answer the request for our environmental analysis to be. So
We guys got that data available.
we have to.
Well, I think that's what we're saying here, is that you've requested it, and the applicant's here tonight to hear that, so we'll come up with a method to do that.
That would be much appreciated, just because I think I speak for a lot of parents who are concerned about that specific area.
Sure. Well, I mean, there's family homes all around this site and a school as well,
There's a
so.
lot of children outside of here, and that's a massive concern.
And that is a big concern. It is relatively close, and there's a lot of construction, and, you know, it's not always wet. There's times when it's dry or dusty or whatever,
I just
so.
want to make sure that area's been tested,
Thank you.
because I haven't seen areas that have.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I just want to make sure that area, the soil's been tested, because I don't see insurance that it has.
Okay.
Not, maybe sporadic, but I feel like maybe a little extra diligence in that area that abuts a school might be a smart thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Got a question.
Yep.
And Anthony Antonello, the 34 Marion Road Extension. I was the former DPW director. I'm also a registered professional engineer in Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And my question is, do you have a consultant that's going to review what the developer's consultant has presented to us?
Yes.
Or is your agent review?
No, there'll be.
Professional that reviews?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Have you selected him yet? Are we going to get a copy of his review report that we can comment on it? I'd like to get a copy of it.
I think there's been no report yet done because the consultant needs to come on board with this. This has all just been submitted to this. I believe it'll be a woman that's doing that review. Right now, the firm of Horsley Witten has been doing work for the town for some other pieces, and we are in the process of giving them a proposal and getting that back.
Will that consultant work for the Conservation Commission or the Planning Board or the Board of Selectmen? Who will oversee that consultant and hire that person?
It'll be a combination of the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission. And we'll decide, we've been working together, the chairman of the Planning Board and myself have been, and the town administrator and other members have been having discussion about just how we'll put that together.
They don't have a consultant yet, the Planning Board that will be doing?
There's been no application to the Planning Board yet.
Nothing.
This is the application to the Conservation Commission, which we're dealing with first. And in that is...
But they went before the Board of Selectmen and got a sewer permit.
Yeah, that was...
Well, then the project has been presented to the town. And who's reviewing the project for the town?
The Horsley Witten was the firm that reviewed the sewer and the water pieces for the town of Scituate. We now have a hearing, we've got the application before us. We have to open this hearing within a timely period, which we have, And we are working with Horsley Witten to develop that and decide on the process that they'll review these pieces between our different boards. Rather than have independent, separate review, we prefer to use a firm that can be comprehensive in looking at all these pieces. And that's why we've chosen to go in that direction.
I thought you said they already have a consultant reviewing the planning.
No, I just said we don't.
Who reviewed the sewer?
Horsley Witten did. I believe the selectmen, the town of Scituate selectmen are the sewer and water commissioners, if I'm not mistaken.
They are.
This would be a good project.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Pat Collins, I live about Country Way. I have a question. I know that we're all concerned because it used to be the living homes. But I'm also concerned, if you can please tell me what kind of light industrial activities were going on here in the mid-80s to the early 90s.
Okay. Is one of the applicants prepared to?
What was going on in the 80s and 90s, Jim? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah, so,
What industrial activities were going on the property in the mid-80s to the 90s?
right, so it was originally federal property. It went out of service just after the First World War. And then, I think in 1937 through the
No, I'm not
mid-80s.
interested in that. I'm just interested in the 80s and then up to the 90s.
Okay,
Specifically.
But I think it would be fair to just give us the whole background. I mean, you've asked the question, but I think we might as well hear the whole.
so you've heard about the George Goulston Company used it for the manufacture of white oils that's used in weaving of fabric. The oil is applied to fabric. After that, the buildings were used for storage of tables and chairs and equipment. There was no
When did he stop
manufacturing.
manufacturing the white oil?
I'm sorry?
When did he stop manufacturing the white oil on the property?
So according to my notes, I have mid-1980s. The regulatory documents that were submitted for the site, the phase one, probably has the actual years based on its history, but I don't have them in my notes right now.
Okay, well, I'd be very concerned about that because I lived over on Kingsway at that period of time. And I used to walk Tilden and Haverly, that whole park area, not going onto the property of the living homes. However, I used to see huge stainless steel tanker trucks entering that property at all hours. And I reported it to the health department here in the town of Scituate several times and never got a response from them and followed up with questions to them. Because at that time, there was nothing supposed to be going on that property. But yet, there were very large tanker trucks coming and going onto that property during that time frame. So, I mean, I think that a lot of us that have lived in this town a number of years have seen a lot of things coming and going off of that property. And I know that Mr. Goulston removed a piece of his property off of that property recently, and there were unexploded plastic caps in it. So what other unexploded ordinances on that property? But that's what I'd like to say.
As far as specific activities that took place, from my experience reviewing these double reports, I can't comment on those. What I can say, though, is that the investigations that were done by, I think there were 5 of them over the course of the past 10 or 15 years, when they collected samples for the broadest range of contaminant conditions. So they tested for chlorinated solvents, they tested for PCBs, they tested for asbestos, they tested for what are called PAHs, petroleum hydrocarbons, essentially the full list of potential contaminants, because there's uncertainty about what might have been done at the property historically. So there has been very comprehensive testing, regardless of the fact that perhaps every activity wasn't understood, from 20 or 30 years ago. And only those contaminants that I mentioned earlier, petroleum, hydrocarbons, PAHs, and likely from lead-based paint, were the ones found in the soil of the property. So that should be some reassurance. That's something I mentioned in the
Well, that
public
is some
meeting.
reassurance, but whenever you disturb the ground, and there is an elementary school right there, so when they're disturbing the ground and they're clearing, and they have to clear the property to put the homes on, and to put in their roads, and to put in their sewer, all of those particles are going to be airborne. And then that's a very densely populated part of town. And we have a huge amount of young families, and we have an elementary school like this. So this is a huge concern for the town.
Absolutely.
And I would like to ask another question.
Oh, can I respond to that one?
Yes.
So I mentioned earlier that whenever contaminated materials are excavated, there has to be a report made to the DEP. And in that report, all of the procedures, we're required to take special procedures to control all of those things you just described. So in other words, when contaminated soil is excavated, dust control measures have to be employed to make sure that you don't have dust migrating onto other people's properties, that can be affected by them. So all of those procedures, we are required to specify and describe in a report that goes to the DEP and will also go to the town. So those steps are mandated by the law, and it's something that I'm obligated to, oversee and make sure that happens whenever any work like that occurs on contaminated property. Next question. Sure.
Have the toll brothers already taken control over this piece of property? Are you owners of this property yet?
No.
Okay, you are not the owners of the property. Because I've also found it extremely curious traveling on Hathaway, because my grandchildren, I have several grandchildren who live in that neighborhood. And traveling on Hathaway, the amount of water that comes off of that property onto Hathaway Road 12 months out of the year. And I'm talking in the winter time, it's like driving on a skating river right at the entrance to their property, right there. I have lived in a lot of different places in the United States of America, and the majority of places do not allow property owners to put water onto a living road or any road. You have to keep your water on your own road, living on your own property. And it's always amazed me that the town of Scituate has not made them put a swale or something else in front of that property to maintain a clear roadway. But 12 months out of the year, you guys did mucking back there or what? We had a drought, but there was still water on that road.
So just, I don't know that you were here when they started, but part of the process this evening was what we call stormwater review, and part of this project would be that they have the same or less flow off this property than what currently exists after they develop it. And what they've shown is a series of stormwater basins and other pieces to deal with that. We know that the soils aren't great in that area, and it's a concern.
And I have one question for you. How many...
Can I just see if there's anybody, I mean, you've had a few. Let me just see if there's someone else in the audience, please. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Shane Belton, 6 Kingsway. I have a question. Do you think the builders would be willing to fund sensors at the school and in the area? It's probably a relatively low-cost thing that would give peace of mind to a lot of people during the construction process. So I think a lot of people's concerns are the particulates, not the water table. So that's probably something that's been done in the past, but would probably be helpful.
Okay. We'll take that into consideration in working with the consultant. It does make a lot of sense, especially with the dust and things that are created, that we, again, make sure that those are safe. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I actually have 2 questions.
Your name is, please?
Oh, sorry, Joan Giacomosi, 37 Irving Road. Mr. Orenberger stated that he had received approval from the water and sewer that was found adequate to support 152 units. And I'm wondering when that decision was made.
You know what? As much as we all have concerns for that, unfortunately, it's not the purview of the Conservation Commission to do that. And
He stated it here, and I'm just wondering, can Mr. Orenberger...
I'm not trying to deflect something, but I am trying to stay on track for what we're here for this evening. If it's a simple question or a simple answer, then that's
I
fine.
don't know
but-
exact timing, the selectmen approved it 2 years ago, and they approved it in the last month.
April
Okay,
18th.
so I guess, my comment is,
April 18th.
Okay, thank you.
if that.
Is that within the last month?
I'm sorry, does that answer your question?
That it was just done in the last month? Or 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Both.
It's the second.
I believe what happened with this project was originally it was approved for approximately 9,800 units of single-family homes, and then I believe that the selectmen gave permission to connect those, both sewer and water, and then the applicant came back with a larger number in the over 55 community, but they have a smaller number of bedrooms, lesser number of bedrooms, and that's how the flow is calculated.
Okay, and the lesser number of bedrooms, because I have some documents here that say they're going to be 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath units.
That might be the single-family houses, but you know what, and again, I don't want to deviate too much from what we have.
Then I just have one other
Sure.
question. Someone talked about the exceeding residential limits in some areas. Jim Ash, I think, was talking about that. And I'm just wondering who is making those measurements? Is that OSHA standards? Is that, what are the residential limits? Identifies what those limits are.
Yeah, those are Department of Environmental Protection, Mass DEP residential standards. They're published standards for soil and groundwater.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know who goes left.
Well, your name and address first.
Captain Spears, 17 Road. I don't know whether.
It's usually best to just address it to me, and then,
So I'm addressing the town this question.
sure.
My husband was a local 6 asbestos coverer. There was a smokestack, there was asbestos line from the radio station that is not there now. Who took the town and how was it transported out of the town?
Do you know when it was taken down?
I have no idea.
It's been disappeared over the last
I think
30
the
years.
top half fell off, and then the rest of it just disappeared. Yeah, it's been the last 2 years.
Okay.
And that
In the
was
last, how many?
at least 2, yeah.
Last 2 years? Okay. Does anybody, see what we can find out? Yes, ma'am.
Laura Curtin, 58 Kenneth Road.
I'm sorry, your address?
58 Kenneth
Okay.
Road. I too am very concerned about the level of contamination that potentially is still there. And like those before me, I don't mean any disrespect, but I really feel that the town needs to do an independent study that is not paid for by toll brokers, something that we can be comfortable with. We all have stories of people that have some sort of illness. I can also speak for Donna Green, Magic Moon Foundation, who works with children with AIDS. And there have been a number of children in the past few years diagnosed that have passed. And I want to go down that hole because nobody really wants to hear it and look at it. I don't know. However, this really struck a chord with me. She told me a story about a family member of a child who brought their child to Children's. And they said, what is the address of your child? And the person gave the address and they said, oh, we know that neighborhood. And to that regard, I do have the latest, like 2010 report from DEP, which isn't the final 2011 report. And I'm not an environmentalist, but it looks like with symbols that say GW2, GW3, GW2 in different sections, if I'm reading the grades appropriately, it looks like this lead in that, which for me, in my uneducated eye, GW would mean groundwater. So that's concerning to me. It doesn't give me whether this was pre-cleanup from the certain section by the DEP that was initiated in 2005,
Okay.
or, you know, we don't know what the recent soil testing is from that remediation. The latest testing that I can see is maybe 2007 based on this report.
Mr. Ash, do you want to speak
And
to
we know
that?
things rise to the top
Well,
from
let's,
sediment.
Well, there was sampling conducted, you know, up to, I think, 2010. The final closure report was submitted in 2011. So that would have been, you know, when all the sampling was conducted, essentially from 2004 to 2010.
There were 5 field
That's right.
investigations.
And all of that data from all of those investigations was then compiled and used for the site closure report in 2011. Was that
Can I
your
ask Mr. Ash a question?
let's just kind of stick to one thing.
My understanding from that time period, it was just that northwest parcel off Longley Road that was really concentrated on by the DEP. The rest of the property, which, again, from my uneducated eye, but I know a little bit about science, is about 70% of the property, that there might be some independent soil pit testing, but it doesn't feel like it's enough. I live downstream from the runoff that this woman described. This is where a lot of the cases of issues are, health issues, serious health issues.
Just let me jump in for 1 second, and I'm certainly no expert. Typically, our hearings involve vernal pools and BVWs and things like that, so this is a much broader scope, and we've got this filing a few weeks ago, and we've been trying to get up to speed to some degree. We're going to have a consultant on board that's going to look at a myriad of these issues. I also spent some time with other town officials who've been dealing with this site for years. There's been many proposals to this site over a vast period of time. Other developers have paid for studies and cleanup, and quite honestly, I think if this site were just left alone, who knows what would be out there. So to some degree, the interest that developers have had in this piece of property over the years have brought to light some of the issues that have been there, and some of them have gotten dealt with where they may not have been at all. So I think there's some positives and negatives to some of this, and we'll have to weigh that out as we move forward. We have I think, an excellent health agent in Jen Keefe, and I've spent some time with Jen about these and bringing me up to speed on some of the pollution issues. She's very well-versed in this. And we also talked a little bit about the reports or the thoughts that there were other areas around here that would be potential cancer cells, is what was the discussion. And Jen has that information as the health agent in the town of Scituate, and she said that they have none for her information. I think that's as recent as maybe 2011 or 12. No, the only thing that Scituate is predominantly known for with cancer things is actually a melanoma, and it's more because of the makeup of our community. But if you know, she's been a good resource for some of this.
This is actually her background, so she's a professional.
And she's been very helpful and we're going to tap all those resources for the town of Scituate to look at those pieces, because we know that there's a school there, we know that there's families there, there's children there. You know, we certainly don't want to create that sort of thing. Certainly, folks that are building a house there that they'd like to sell someone don't want to be in the middle of all that. That would be a huge liability for them. Nobody wants to own a site that's polluted. So there's good reason to all this stuff, and I'm not saying we want to promote this as being a great thing for this, but I honestly don't think that a lot of these issues would ever have been brought to light in the way that they have without this going forward.
And I think to follow up to that, and it's really great to hear you say that, I think, and I would totally agree, that if we could have some proper remediation that the community feels comfortable with, we're all going to be safer.
None of us are just going to buy the fact that everyone will say it's going to be okay.
But it also makes me uncomfortable that the town hasn't done an independent testing other than what DEP did, which of course is state regulatory.
Well, my understanding, though, is that the DEP is the authority on some of this, and that we don't have the jurisdiction in some of that to go forward. We can talk about all this, but...
But there has to be enough information for them to open an investigation.
And I think Jen is a good person to bounce some of that off of. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Marty Gustafson on my road. Who owns the property?
Well, let the experts tell us.
Who owns it? They don't own it. Who owns it?
The Goulston family, through, I'm not sure exactly what the entity is, it's some type of realty trust. The Goulston family?
Oh, they still own it?
Yes.
And just to comment on her thing, I grew up in that area too. And we were in high school, that area was known, one of my teachers, I just remember this, that she said that was the biggest antic area in all of Massachusetts. That's what I was But just so you know, they brought...
Well, I think we need to be careful. You know, obviously, everybody has concerns for that, but I think we have to make sure that the statements that we make about these things have some fact or basis when we go forward. Just like when we look at a vernal pool, or we look at, and I realize they're very different things. I mean, obviously, this is much more important than a couple of tree frogs. Okay.
And, sorry, one other comment. Could the Toll Brothers somehow get a website together where we can follow what's going on, like we weren't aware of the sewer thing? I mean, maybe that would help relieve some of the questions that when we come to these meetings, that we can follow along what's taking place on for purchasing that property or developing it.
I think that, and I can ask a little bit more, it seems like the town should have something where you can go on to it, at least to know, when we stop this hearing tonight, we're going to continue this hearing to another date, and you're going to hear that before you leave here. So you're going to know when the Conservation Commission's going to hold another hearing. Unfortunately, because of the different concerns and aspects of this project, this is going to be looked at by a number of different people. So there'll be planning board hearings, there'll be traffic, at some point, you know, police, fire, there'll be a number of different entities that look at this. They don't all happen at the same time. And unfortunately, we don't have the control over all that. But hopefully, and I'm not a techie when it comes to setting some of those things up. But
Well, I realize that, that's why I'm asking maybe if they could do it, saying, this is our next step, this is where we're proposing to get, you know, we're going in front of this board, just to keep us aware.
I'm going to ask as well and see if it couldn't be more, I think it should be more based towards the, yeah, but I think it should be more, personally, I think it should be more based for the town to have that information of when hearings are going to happen.
Discussed this last year.
Okay.
Still doesn't sound.
Sure. Okay, well, let's see what we can, that's why we're having this tonight, to get these pieces. Yes, ma'am.
Andrea Hunt, 66 Nanwalk Road. I have a three-part question. First of all, the wetland area that they're going to be creating, it's not on this particular map, it was another map, that they said they were putting a vegetative wetland to take care of some of the other wetlands that is going to be filled. Is that wetland going to be like what we would consider a very large swale, or what we used to call in Virginia as a borrow pit, to take care of the runoff that would be handled by the vegetative states that you will be filling in?
If I understand the question correctly, the answer is no. It's not going to be a stormwater feature for the site at all. None of the runoff from the development is going to be directed to that area. It's going to be designed to function similar to the adjacent vegetated wetlands.
But you are digging and removing soil to create that area?
Yep, we'll be removing the pavement that's here, and if there's any unsuitable soil beneath it, we'll remove that as well. And then we would aim to set the finish elevation to be close to the adjacent wetlands. So we wanted to sort of blend right in with the wetlands.
And then two, in the process of digging to remove any of that soil and so forth, should you come across a contamination that has to be investigated, would work then be stopped and the area be sealed off until that is investigated?
I think Jim's answered yes to that question.
That would be
That would be appropriate.
Okay, so then, in essence, I guess my final question would be, if the very worst thing happened, I've lived in town for 72 years. I've heard all of these stories. I think everybody who's lived here for any length of time has been touched by somebody who has had cancer from that area or has lost somebody in their family or there's been an illness or something that has raised these concerns. So my question is, for all of these years that we have just let that land sit, and we are concerned that runoff has infected our families, would it then be better to go ahead and dig and remove these contaminants and soils? Or is by opening up a Pandora's box and making the situation worse or better?
So Toll Brothers' plan, they did that additional investigation after closure, and their consultant did find a few other places where residential standards were exceeded, and the plan is to remove that soil.
Okay, I read that in that 2011 closure, that there was, they said that it met with surface soils, but underneath they were not.
Well, actually, Toll Brothers has gone above and beyond what the regulatory requirements were. So the work that they're proposing to do is after that 2011 closure document expired. So, as Dave mentioned at the introduction, they technically didn't need to do any of this additional work. The property was available for development at that stage. But in the abundance of caution, because of the proposed use of the property, they essentially went back out and retested a lot of the things that I think the people in the audience are asking for. Toll Brothers did. They did that supplemental investigation. They sampled many of the same places that the previous consultants had already sampled and closed. They found a few places where there were still residential exceedances, and they're going to remove that as part of their development process. So it's almost been like there's been 2 phases of cleanup. The first one done under the previous ownership, and now Toll Brothers is proposing to take it even that one step further.
And I'm going to just, I know that there's still a lot of questions tonight, and I'd like to try to answer any new questions. We opened this hearing at 7, it's 8:30 now. We do have a few other people here this evening for hearings after we're done with this. So if the question's a new question or a small question, let's do that. And what we're trying to do is have a list of things that these folks can come back with, that we can try to get some answers for you, and then hopefully at the next hearing, answer some of those. So, you've already had one. There's a fellow behind you.
Hi, I'm Jim Malarkey, Journal Road.
Jim, what's your name again?
Malarkey as in full.
Okay. I didn't mean to do that.
In hearing about digging the test pits for check on, how deep are those pits? And would you be willing to do like a nice 20-foot core sample, see what's down?
I don't recall the depth of those test pits. I think probably around 4 feet deep, but I could find out for you. I don't have the reports on that.
I'm just afraid if this stuff is just on this is a little bit shallow pitch, you're not going to find anything to go down.
Well, now sampling has been conducted to much greater depths than that on the property. So they actually did do soil borings. That question came up during the public meeting, and I recall seeing borings at least 15 or 20 feet deep at that time in those reports, but I didn't confirm all of them. The test pits I was referring to, the more widespread ones in the back 40, those were more shallow and looking for surface conditions. But there's certainly been deeper sampling conducted.
Thank you.
Penny, go ahead.
I'd like to just ask, could you explain to the audience what, when you say closure, what you
What does that
mean,
mean?
because I think that will answer a lot of questions where, and people will understand how the toll brothers have gone beyond.
Beyond it. So the process of investigating, remediating, and closing a contaminated property in Massachusetts is all prescribed in a very big document called the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. And it describes the steps that the LSP is required to follow for evaluating conditions, collecting samples, preparing plans, scopes of work, submitting all of that to DEP, evaluating risks, developing a remediation plan. And once all of that is done, then essentially certifying that all of the work has been done necessary for regulatory closure. That's what we call regulatory closure. Is the LSP signs a document and says, we're done, the property meets the requirements for ongoing use without threat of contaminant conditions. So that was done in 2011, and Toll Brothers came in and questioned that work and did another sampling program.
So that, according to the state, DEP, the site was clean and done prior to this?
2011.
Okay. And just closed and done, meaning the site could stay as is, or the site could then be used for whatever purpose?
No, met residential development standards under that 2011 closure as well.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to do just a couple of quick, I think there's other folks that haven't had a chance to speak at all. So woman kind of behind you.
Another Malar from Suzanne. I had a couple questions about, you mentioned, I think, 3 chemicals or toxins or something. Was that from the findings of the Toll Brothers recent looking, or is that all that's ever been found on the property? That's just one thing. And then just with them doing the second look and finding some things wrong, we've been assured that if anything's found wrong, some report's going to be filed, everything's going to happen. Well, they found something wrong. Was a report filed? Is everything going to happen? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know they have their report, but it seems that it's not in everyone's hands yet. So how does that figure?
So, let's see, first question first. So you asked about the 3 contaminants that were found. The same 3 class of contaminants were found both in the previous investigations that were closed and when the Toll Brothers did their investigation. And they were petroleum hydrocarbons, essentially, oil, so you see with oil. A class of compounds called PAHs, that's the acronym, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They are resulting from the incomplete combustion of petroleum compounds or organic materials. So PAHs are in diesel exhaust. Believe it or not, they're even in the charcoal of a burnt steak. Right? So they're pretty widely common contaminant conditions, but they're present in wood and coal ash and incomplete combustion products and therefore have cleanup standards. The third was lead. Lead is also a fairly common contaminant. We find a lot of it everywhere in metropolitan areas from the former use of leaded gasoline. So there's a pretty high background concentration of lead. But it's also present in lead paint. So anywhere where there's a former building or maybe a building burned down or even work that scrape paint off, sometimes you'll find lead and soil associated with that lead paint. So then your next question was about if this new condition was found, what would be done about that? So I haven't dug into the analysis of the data that was encountered, but it's quite possible, the same contaminants were found, that the site could still be closed and used even given the contaminant conditions that were found. In other words, they aren't that bad. They're actually consistent with what the previous consultant had found, right? But a few of them exceed residential standards. And under the law, you're actually, an LSP can average concentrations to come up with what the actual exposure would be. And if they're below, if the average is below the residential standard, you can leave them there. In this case, Toll Brothers has decided to take the more conservative step of removing that soil with any detections above the residential standard. So essentially, they're going back into the same area that the previous consultant had found. They found a few, not large areas, they're, I think, a couple thousand square feet, but, you know, in one area, it's only the upper 2 feet. Another place, I think they proposed to excavate as deep as 10, where some above-ground storage tanks were. And essentially, to dig up all of those locations where any soil sample exceeded that standard.
Yes, sir.
Steve Petrowski, 119 Hathaway Road. I was wondering if you could pop up your basin map again real quick. You guys had pointed out on the stormwater that in the southeast corner, where my property resides, there's a lot of water that comes off the property. And I'm seeing that there's not a storm basin there. So the question is that's correct. With all those houses, the townhouses that are there, where will that stormwater go? Because right now it's coming to our house. If we've done the analysis of flow, and you're going to mirror that flow, then our property will still deal with that. Plus now you'll have a lot more flat pavement areas. So what's going on with that corner? Is it going towards the wetlands, or is it going into, how's it going to be remediated?
Stormwater in this area, here on, it's going to go to the north.
Based on grading, or?
Based on grading, yeah.
Okay.
The roadway grading, we'll bring it to the north. We've actually got we're going to have a stormwater channel along this side. It'll go under the road and then continue on here. It'll be a stormwater quality channel, or actually a flow attenuation channel that will slow it down before releasing it. The rest of this is going this way. Now, beyond the site, with the initial design, there was no increase, but there was no decrease. And we are aware of that there is an issue right here. We're going to take a look right in here at what can be done, because Toll Brothers realize there's a lot coming off the site, and if they're not doing anything, it's not going to get better. So they're going to take a look at a way to alleviate the problem.
Right. And I would prefer that the commission actually walk that site. You've walked all the other sites, but if you can walk the ones that were pointed out specifically, just to take a look at that, because obviously this Friday would be a good day to walk.
Yeah, I live right down the street from this, guys, so I'm invested with you in this.
So we're talking about the southeast corner?
Yes. The extreme southeast corner.
Where we move all the cars out in the store.
Okay.
Correct, you guys can now come into the driveway.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we are going to keep this till 9 o'clock, so we've got 10-15 minutes tops, and I want the applicants to have a chance to do a couple of things too. So I'm going to work my way across, and then that's going to be it. So.
I'm McCormick, 29 Marion Road Extension. Thank you for having after us tonight. Question on wetlands, remember those? Those new wetlands, I think they were called replication areas. I mean, are they effectively brand new wetlands created to replace other wetland space that is eliminated because of development? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And how does the process of deciding where they go work between the developer applicant and the commission?
Okay. One of the things that the commission asked back when they did the ORAD application is that we asked that we sort of recognize that wetlands, a larger area of a wetland is much more effective for habitat than tiny little dispersed ones around the property. And we made that comment to the developer a couple of years ago. And so what they did is there was already a wetlands area on there. And it looks to me in this plan that they've expanded that area. Part of it's by the removal of a road, the access road that currently goes in there. That access road cuts through a wetland, so by removing that access road, they're now tying two wetlands together. So that is in our mind, that's a benefit.
kind of agreed from our end of the street, except for now, pincered in between an expanded wetland, a runoff flow into James Steve's property, and a circle that backs right onto the setback of the zone district allows. So it's something that if things go forward, we might like to work with both brothers on a residential perspective on how we solve the corner here.
Okay.
That traffic circle, the only traffic circle on the map.
All right. Thank you.
Because the wetland expansion pushes it towards their property, and I guess might feed into the runoff.
Are you getting that, Mark?
Does that make sense?
He's on the end road.
Yeah, and you're talking about this
Yes.
area here?
Yeah. And so were you suggesting that the location of the replication area push the development in that direction?
I was, I guess, partially if that's what's happening.
I don't think so, really. The replication area is really down in here, and it's in between existing wetlands. There's a finger of wetland, a narrow ditch of wetland that extends up here. So there's no activity happening east of that in terms of wetland replication, and that was really a limiting factor where we could move this area. We did not want to get within 50 feet of that.
Yeah, that's
Isn't also a factor that you're
Excuse me, sir. Keep, I mean, your name?
Paul Ferris, Marion Road Extension. I'm
Okay.
the direct abutter to that circle.
Yeah.
So it's a major concern. I know we're not talking about roads and buildings.
Well, we're talking about
But
drainage.
that wetland is expanded and the setback has changed now because there's where those buildings and concrete are, they're tearing down, they're expanding it all there. So hopefully the town's environmental scientists or LSP will be able to answer some of these questions that are going to come up in the future. Who determines wetlands, and they're making their own wetlands.
That'll be their environmental person. The LSP will look at the pollution issues.
Okay, so our
And then
environmental.
our consultant, they have a number of different people on board, and I believe there's been an environmental person with this firm before. I'm assuming it's going to be the same one. We're still trying to get some of that information, but we'll have a person looking at the environmental issues, we'll have a person looking at the drainage issues. They'll all, the same consulting firm, there'll also be a person looking at the pollution issues. And there'll be different people for those.
Just remember, this is preliminary, we haven't accepted anything. This is our preliminary take on this.
Jump into a couple on this side of the room. Yes, sir.
Ben Bornstein, 99 First Pressure. I just was curious if this project had filed an environmental impact assessment under the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, and if so, if that's publicly available.
I'm not a... What was your question again? Okay.
Because it might meet threshold.
Okay. We can look at that. Yes,
Hi, Taylor McNary, 10th Ave. I was just wondering, when you were talking about the storm drains and going out and assessing it, if you took into consideration the big storms and the flooding that we get down there, especially on 10th Ave, we get 6 feet of water and we're stuck there for 5 days. And so the thought of having additional water drainage come down in any capacity, especially from the single home units, is horrifying, obviously.
do you want to take, and I'd like to keep it brief tonight.
I'll be very brief. The idea with the design of this is to actually decrease flow coming off the site. So we are looking at off-site, but we are decreasing what's going off-site.
I mean, what they've created...
They already have such
Right.
bad drainage issues there. The town doesn't seem-
Right, well, the town recognizes, also serving on a couple of different committees, a lot of the flooding, which we know on 10th Ave, is overwash from the ocean.
Right.
And, but there's all, but it can also be additional water flowing downhill can create that as well. What I'm seeing in this plan, and I'm not here to defend what they're doing it tonight, but they've created a whole bunch of stormwater basins. And so those will hold water to a certain degree. At some point, depending on the severity of the storm, they'll overflow. But the idea is that that water would be retained on the site It's not gonna solve everybody's problem around there, I'm sure, but that's the general idea of the stormwater bylaw, is that they retain that water, and then it gets dispersed more slowly. Yes, ma'am.
Andrea Burson, Tilden Road. Regarding, back to you, Ms. Brown, the testing, when you go back into test, do you run a full panel test on different contaminants, or you just go back to the ones that were previously found?
Like if something new is encountered, you mean, or?
So when you go in, do you specifically look for those contaminants that were previously found, or do you do a full search of everything that's known out there?
Yeah, it would depend on the situation. So for instance, for the areas where white oils were encountered above residential standards, additional sampling in the vicinity of that to confirm that the excavation got all of the white oil contamination. In that case, you collect petroleum hydrocarbon testing for that. If a new condition were encountered, a drum or something, a waste disposal area, debris, it would be appropriate to collect the broader suite of tests, because you don't know what came out of that drum. So it would depend on the application. If you're cleaning up an area where I confirm there's petroleum here, you test the petroleum to confirm you got it. If it's in a new location, you might consider, well, it would be appropriate to consider a wider suite of analysis.
So could there be something else in there that wasn't recently? In the, say, the white oil. So say you go back into that section that was at white oil, and you're not testing for anything else because you consider it clean the last time?
Well, but those areas, they were sampled for a broad suite. So when I said they found more white oil,
right,
they tested for a broad suite of contaminants at that time, and it was only petroleum and pHs that exceeded the threshold. So, yeah, I probably misspoke. I didn't mean to imply that's the only thing they tested for when they went back in. They actually tested for, in both cases.
Oh, in both cases.
In both
Okay, great.
cases.
Thank you.
So many of the tests, when you look like petroleum hydrocarbon test, actually looks for a broad suite of chemicals associated with petroleum hydrocarbons. There's another test called for VOCs, AE260 is another test. That test for, you see as many as 20 or 30 different contaminants that might be present there. So those tests were conducted, and the only things that exceeded the standards were those three I described.
Okay. I'm going to go one more, and that's, we've got to have a chance for a couple of members.
Am I the one more?
That's it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, I appreciate it. My name is Christine Move. I don't live in Scituate anymore. Am I allowed to ask questions? I'm a member of the Proving Grounds Group from back when the development by Pulte was proposed. And what has been a common theme throughout, looking at the property, attempts to develop the property beforehand, was every time somebody goes in, they find more. And if we had access to what you've done additionally, which is great, the more you find and clean up, the better off everyone is. We can all agree to that. If the public can have access to where those test pits were, you might actually satisfy some more people. And if it doesn't seem like it was dispersed enough around the property, then perhaps we could just dive in and get grid pattern testing done. It would really put the issue to bed. How much does such a thing cost? The fact that it hasn't been done thus far makes me think it's cost prohibitive. Is that correct?
No, it's not a matter of cost. It's frankly a matter of effectiveness. I'm so troubled by the fact that I can't explain how the process works, because I truly understand your concerns. The analogy or the description of sampling I gave during the public meeting is when you collect a soil sample, essentially use a stainless steel trowel, you put it into a jar, send it to the lab. That lab takes about 1 gram of soil out and runs it through their sophisticated instruments to do the testing. So it's about as big as a raisin, or half a raisin is what they run through the test. So the concept of random sampling, if you think about random sampling, you're essentially taking, something as big as a raisin blindly out in the middle of a field to run it for testing. It's much more effective, as they have done at this property, to evaluate where operations have been contacted, the manufacturing operations, where actual facilities, equipment was located, where that debris disposal area was located, and then to collect the samples in the locations targeted toward where activities took place that may have caused that contamination. So frankly, it's not a matter of cost, it's the best first step is frankly going to be this test pitting operation, and then the act of redeveloping the property, when you will see, and there's going to be earth-moving activities taking place, you'll get even a more thorough glimpse of conditions in those locations. And at that time, it may be appropriate to collect a soil sample if those debris locations or structures or formal pipes and that sort of thing are encountered during the winter.
I do understand that, and, but even now, we just had this fine woman tell us about what she witnessed. That in and of itself, if she can take a look at this map and start pointing to areas where she saw these trucks going in and out, that should be opening a whole new case again. Do you know my point is? Because that was initially what was said, that if new information is brought forth, we will be investigating. We've just gotten new information. This is not anything I heard in the past, and I tried awfully hard to find anything out that people knew. You know, I'm not digging for stuff that, you know, is some kind of a tale, things that people witnessed. And now we have some. So, you know, and I completely understand your point about, you know, you're getting a few grains of something here. Right. And potentially, you know, if you're doing every acre or something like that, you know, okay, you're going to get this little teeny sample out of 1 acre. All right, yeah, you're probably not going to hit something. But there's got to be a way to satisfy this community, because no one's going away. We just keep coming back until we feel like, all right, someone's done it. We're all set. Go ahead, do what you got to do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, is this making sense to people, or am I just going on rant?
I think that, just want to speak out of turn, I think it would be great for the town if somebody did go in there and clean up whatever is in there that might be making a difference. And I agree with you. I think that all of us just need reassurances that every precaution is going to be taken to make sure that this community is safer than it is now. Because we don't feel like it's safe because of all the illnesses that we have encountered and children are being lost. And we don't want to lose any more, and I think that's why we're all here tonight. So if there's an opportunity to make that property cleaner and safer, and if the co-owners are going to take that task on, I think that we will continue to come to these meetings because we want to be sure it's done.
I appreciate and hear the concerns that folks have here, as I'm sure that the folks that are in the developers and the proponents of this project are hearing it as well. And they have people here to try to answer your questions and your concerns. And again, I think we're hearing that this site was a closed site, which is kind of disheartening, very concerning that at one point this site was a closed site entirely. Just as if you went out to purchase a home, you'd look around and say, what are the other issues here, and who's telling me the truth, and who's... these guys have gone again and tested because they want to be sure. I mean, I wouldn't want to own that site if I thought it was going to be a problem. And so we're hearing that piece of it. We're also going to, as a town, we're going to have a consulting firm to review a number of rid of these things, including the pollution. We have people within the town staff that will review it again as well. We've heard tonight about the concerns for the school and other things, which I'm sure everybody wants to know about. So we're not going to just roll over and let this fly by any stretch. But I think it's a more positive thing that these get addressed and dealt with, as opposed to let that site sit there.
I do agree with that. I absolutely do.
I think, yes, sir.
I think the most simple way that I could put it is that when we place the property under contract, in our behind closed doors, we said, we're not touching this thing if it's contaminated. Not interested, don't need it. And we went out and found the best environmental consultants we could find, and we said, what do we have to do to be confident this site is clean? You have no budget. And we paid them to go do that. And they told us, here's what's out there based on the best methods, that are out there. We said, thank you very much. And then we hired Jim, and we said, Jim, what does it take for you to second guess what we already paid for, no budget, what does it take? I mean, our whole approach is how do we, using the science, the best science that's out there and the best people that we could get access to, how do we get comfortable? How do we sleep at night that, we've made the right decisions? Completely understand. I'm the father of 3 children under the age of 12. I absolutely empathize with your perspective. I'm just giving you our perspective, is that's the course we've been on, and that's what we've been trying to do.
Is there a way, you've mentioned that you've had these reports done, can those reports get to our consultant?
That's really a takeaway that's come up a couple times. I don't want to answer it tonight. I just want to go look at that question, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, I think that's
a bunch of
I'm sure you do.
Reports and, proprietary type of information. I just want to get back to you on that answer.
Okay.
We certainly want to be transparent as much as we can.
Right. Okay. Pat, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is the first public meeting with the board in town, and I think it was good to get all these issues out. I think our expertise is more going to be on the wetland issues and on stormwater. So I think when we continue this to another date, we probably won't be addressing the health and site cleanup issues, but there will be boards from the town. The planning board will be looking at cluster development. They probably should plan specifically when this topic is totally discussed. That way, we've heard it, and we can focus on the things that we may have some control over managing. And I think there'll be a health agent, and there'll also be a health consultant, that should be with
Okay. What's that? Just before we do that one. So just because we are here for a conservation meeting, and there's a couple little points I wanted to bring up. In the areas that we're constructing these detention areas or drainage areas.
Replication areas?
The replication areas I know you're going to plant out, but in the stormwater detention areas or whatever, just think about how we're going to plant those out and look at that. We've seen some really good choices made. You're removing a great deal of habitat when you. I know that seems pale compared to the concerns that people have had here tonight, but there's a great deal of habitat being removed when all this construction takes place, and so that some of the additional green areas are those detention areas, and if we can look at how those might be vegetated.
Provide some habitat.
Again, this can be down the road a little bit, but I think that's something that's a purview of our commission. We don't usually go this far afield with other things. I guess that's, probably had a few more, but we'll save them for another meeting. Okay.
Just ask you something about habitat. We have tree frogs, right?
Yeah.
Are they going to leave enough area?
There's a vernal pool that's off of Irving Road.
Well, we got a ton of
Yep.
frogs in our backyard.
Okay.
And they keep me up.
Yeah. So all those habitats will be protected. How much time, Bill, do you think that will take to? I mean, we didn't hear a lot of conservation questions here tonight, but just trying to think about scheduling the next meeting.
Month, Frank?
Okay.
Will we have a consultant in this time?
Yeah.
Should we go to first on the agenda? There's nothing there.
Sure.
I make a motion to continue Toll Brothers to June 7th at 6:30.
Is that a regularly scheduled meeting?
Yes, it is.
Why don't we do it again at 7, and then that'll give us a chance to get...
Oh, okay.
What do you think, Pat? We could clean up
Yeah, we can
some
get
stuff, and then that lets people get home and get to our meeting. We start at 6:15, but we can knock off a lot of, sort of...
June 7th at 7 o'clock, Toll Brothers.
Penny, you may want to leave the location open until we are sure we can either...
I'm not saying the location.
Your location to be decided.
To be on the website, be on the town
Okay.
website, as soon as we know it.
You want to second that, sir?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
And Frank, if the panel put together, you're going to do an on-site visit before then?
Yeah, I think we'll want to get to some places. We'll,
Right, and so Pat will get in touch with Mark and...
Right,
That's great pictures. Well, thank you very much.
thank you. Sure. So we have, so we're still televised and still,
Yes.
okay? Okay?
I make a motion to continue 23 Sunset Road to 5/17 at 8 o'clock.
Second?
Is that the earliest you can do that one, Penny?
I'm pretty booked.
Okay.
I'm pretty booked, sorry.
Okay.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So do we want to, do you need a vote for the CFC, Pat, for,
The one we just did?
yeah. We want to,
We don't vote those.
we don't usually vote a CFC.
Yeah,
Are you
no.
comfortable
He
with?
just,
Whatever.
No, I don't care. We can vote it.
Yeah. I thought we did vote.
No, we don't.
no.
No, it's all on you.
You give us a summary on what it is, and we give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, a consensus,
for it.
yeah.
Septic we built, and that's
Okay.
all we know.
Okay.
And that's probably all we need.
All right, so you can issue a CFC for 67 border.
Pat, is it closing on Friday or that? Is it possible to get that sometime tomorrow afternoon or something?
Ask Carol.
He's asking you. Can you do it?
I'm not going to ask
You
for
gonna
it.
have the day once?
Tomorrow's Thursday.
Carol's still mad at me because this place was full tonight.
No, I didn't care if it was full, it's just what we went through to get here.
All right, so all set up?
Yep.
All right, thanks very much. And thanks for your patience tonight.
Gilson Realty Trust, Sicardi, 40 Piggity Beach Road, raise and rebuild.
This is, I think, have you already been to planning on this one?
Zoning Board of Appeals.
Oh, that's where I saw it. This is, that's all I have.
So, I got to read it. So on May 3rd, 2017, at 8:15 PM, the town hall, not the town hall, the Public Safety Complex in the Emergency Operations Center located 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Massachusetts General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Gilson Realty Trust, Peter Zaccardi, to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling on property located at 40 Piggity Beach Road, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering. I'm representing Peter Zaccardi with this notice of intent application. The plan that we submitted to you is for the raising and reconstructing of a single-family home at 40 Piggity Beach Road. To familiarize you with the plan, the property line is shown here in bold. Piggity Beach Road is on the...
Can't say very well.
That's okay. I'm
No,
also... There are...
You're having trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Piggity Beach Road being right here on the plan, Piggity Beach itself being toward the bottom of the plan. I've highlighted in blue the limits of the coastal beach, Piggity Beach. Off of that is the 50-foot buffer zone, in green is the 100-foot buffer zone.
This entire property is located in land subject to coastal storm flowage, a FEMA zone at elevation 17. There's an existing house at the property. You'll see it in this location. We went to the Zoning Board of Appeals for permission to take that house down and to construct a new house. Permission was granted and a special permit issued for that reconstruction. This represents that reconstructed location. It's a new house. It would be constructed up on pilings to comply with FEMA requirements. The velocity zone is at elevation 17. We're specifying that the pilings are up to elevation 19, 2 feet above the velocity zone. We've submitted a piling layout plan prepared by Anderson Structural Engineering. All of the work is outside the 50-foot setback to the beach. We proposed an erosion control barrier around our limit of work. This area under the house would be restored just with gravel or beach sand under the house. Right now it has an actual foundation that would be removed when the house comes down. There's also an asphalt driveway on the north side of the house. We would be saw cutting along the lot line and removing that asphalt driveway from the property as well. We'd be replacing it with a gravel driveway. The gravel driveway moves to the southern side. You see it depicted here on the site plan.
Penny?
No, it isn't on.
Certainly looks it.
Well, let's find out what your question is.
Yo.
Ooh, Mr. Testy.
Yeah, see,
Is that, okay.
this house is
Bill,
on the beach.
Greg, can you give us indication where the beach is?
Sure. So on Peggotty Beach Road, this is the curve that everyone parks
Yeah.
and stops and looks at. There is a house between us and the beach. This house here, number 4, is located right there. They actually have an access driveway. It's listed on the plan as an 8-foot way right here. This is all existing lawn area. So it is set back from the beach itself. I did bring an aerial photograph. I can pass this down.
So that's not on a coastal bank?
Not at that location, no, because it's all inside of that velocity zone. The coastal bank would be even further up the hill or up the cliff.
Yeah. No, the whole thing.
So you come down Peggotty Beach Road before you make that bend. There's a house here, here's the seawall, here's the beach.
Yeah.
This house here and here, this house is here.
It's this one, right? This little one right there?
That ranch?
Yeah.
Yes, this, yeah.
Yeah, the little thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You won't believe me.
Well, someday he'll learn.
I know that. The whole thing is in 100, but it's a big old
Lisa?
house.
Any questions?
None.
Paul?
No, no questions.
And it basically is
Are there any pollutants on this site?
going up.
Do you have a monitor?
Not that we're aware of.
You have a monitoring well?
We didn't even get a chance to touch on any wetlands things.
So there's no continuation of the beach on this? This is not,
No, there is not. Between this house and the beach is an
Wow.
existing house and driveway.
so are we increasing the square footage in the 100, or is it relatively the same, or what?
On the plan, I've listed the impervious area calculations. It's
Oh, here we go.
1,353 square feet. We're going up to 1,488 square feet of coverage. Underneath the house is obviously not impervious, it's open, but the way the bylaw defines impervious, it includes elevated houses. So there is a slight increase, but
This is on piles.
It's on pile.
Yeah.
on high.
The other
Yeah, I
house
just-
isn't.
We're removing an asphalt driveway where there will be no asphalt driveway.
I understand.
There's a house that's in there on a foundation, and it's being torn down and gone up on piles.
I understand.
It's a substantial
Better than what's
improvement.
there.
Pat?
Yeah, I actually had the same question that Bill had, is like, is it a barrier beach, is it a dune, or is it a coastal beach? And it's just outside the Barry Beach designation. Coastal dune, if you're looking at, coastal bank, if you're looking at where the velocity zone goes to, it's further down the street near where another house we're involved with.
Right, the velocity zone's the ocean.
Yeah, right. And it appears to be a mound of cobble before you get onto this, or maybe proper to a coastal dune, but, I mean, it's gonna be a raise and a rebuild, we're trying to get things up. There's a lot of debris back left. It could be removed, old fencing, stumps and stuff like that. Where the, a little beyond where the deck is on that plan is a, I mean, I'm sure that's coming out because it's, where you want. The only thing, did you want to see structural strength?
Do we have any piling plan or anything yet?
You have a general layout that was provided. It does not include full details. but
Are
it
these
does
driven,
provide-
are these driven piles?
These are driven piles, correct.
Okay.
You know, it shows the location, it's a standard grid layout with it. It would be done in accordance with the building code.
Sure.
Greg, did you say you went through zoning for
Special permit.
A special permit for the raise and rebuild. Correct.
And you'll allow up to 125% or up to 150% of the original
They-
size of the home?
They don't put a maximum on it for the size of the increase.
Such as value of...
No, they don't put a value on it or a percentage increase. They don't list what the increase was here, but this is the layout that was approved. It's anytime you add more than 20% floor area to the house, which we're doing in this case.
And then the ground level where the sand is going to be, that's staying pretty much the same?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I live next door.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
Okay.
1 second. Is there anybody else in the commission? Any other questions? Okay. And your name is, sir?
Joe, 1011. I own the house at 38 Beacon Beach Road.
So you're to the, towards the ocean?
No, to the other side.
Okay.
So my only, I know I'm not gonna stop him, but my only concern is what you gotta do to protect my property, because it's, you know, I own part of that driveway too, where he's cutting. To date, there's been no survey to put, you know, points at the corner of the lots. So that's one thing, I don't know, is that his responsibility or my responsibility? Because that has to be done. And number two, you know, you gotta change the floor of the ocean, because that has a foundation now, and the ocean goes through, it blocks the ocean, just so you're aware of that. But I just wanna make sure who's gonna get the survey, because he hasn't done that. So we know where the property line is in the driveway, because he owns part of it and I own part of it. And what's he gonna do to protect my property? Because, you know, there's only, what, 20 or 30 feet between the houses, I mean, they're very close. So those are my concerns.
We would be doing a survey stakeout of this lot prior to any construction happening there. The driveway is paved on both properties, the abutting property and this one, all as one asphalt surface. So we would be staking out that lot line, and we call out for that to be saw cut so that we can remove the asphalt that's on our portion of that driveway.
Because you gotta put up a construction fence, those are my questions.
So typically, we have some sort of erosion control where we want to stop runoff if it's appropriate. I don't know, can that be constructed and still use the driveway?
Yeah, we have, from the edge of the building or the edge of the pilings over to the lot line is a 9-foot setback. We did propose an erosion control barrier down that entire side lot line,
Okay.
the running side. You know, we could put in a silk fence or a construction fence, you know, to alleviate the concerns, but we did have just a mulch sock along that lot line.
Okay, so right now, what they were doing is controlling any runoff, silt, dirt, that kind of thing. Sometimes we ask that if we're trying to protect a wetland area, that they put up something a little more substantial. We don't want machinery.
And there's a big stump, just so you know, the ocean goes right through.
Right.
It's completely flat.
Yep. The thing is that in this zone, what we're looking to do is remove concrete foundations and get these houses elevated. Unfortunately, that does leave your house more prone to exposure.
See, the issue is, I mean, it doesn't concern me, but my mother's 88 years old. If I raise it up 19 feet, she can't get in the house.
I get it. Yeah,
I mean, I'm just here, like I said, I don't know who's gonna survey that property line, that's my main concern, as long as he puts up some type of,
yeah.
barrier to protect my property, because there's nothing else he can do, right? I mean,
Right.
that's it.
Well, the other thing, I mean, and not to pass the buck, but the demolition permits, the construction permits are issued by the building department. So certainly have the ability to speak to the building inspector if there's something additional that you need. Scituate has certain rules and regulations in effect as to what can be done. Ours is more the purview of the wetlands issue, the environment, and things like that. Certainly I'll take it in, and Mr. Morse is hearing it. We can relay that information back to the owner or the prospective buyer or whatever is going on. But you could also bring your concerns, either a phone call or a letter, or stop into the building department and just let them know who you are and where you are, and this is pretty close proximity. So I think that wouldn't be a bad tack to take. All right?
Is that on sewer?
They're always tough when they're right adjacent to another. And
I can't stop them, but
Yeah.
I just here to,
and if you have a shared driveway, obviously there's some things that you've got
I
to,
mean, it's that, and there's no, for years, nobody cared where the property line was.
right.
I just want to know where it is, so. He's gonna do what he has to do, but I just want to make sure my driveway, the asphalt doesn't get washed away underneath when you're doing construction, things of that nature.
Sure. Well, I think siltation fence and that protection is a good idea, or be required.
Again, we have the mulch stock, and we're certainly open to, if you want to include in a condition a siltation fence, we'll have that.
I think it's a good idea. Gives a little extra.
Sure.
All right. Pat, do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if the silt sock is going down the Begley side, it should go across the back, maybe, I don't know, mid-driveway where you're doing the cut, or someplace so that he doesn't get any extra things washing on him.
Okay. Penny?
No,
Good?
I'm all set.
Bill?
Ready
Good.
to go.
Good. Okay. Have a
I
motion?
make a motion to close.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Sorry you got dragged in here at such a late...
Yeah, but talk to the building department. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I will, yeah. Thank you.
All right, take care.
On May 3rd, 2017, at 8:30 PM, in the Public Safety Complex in the Emergency Operations Center located at 800 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Mass General Laws and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws regarding the application of Kathleen Murphy to construct a detached garage accessory to a single-family dwelling on property located at 5 Jason Lane, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
Again, for the record, Gregory Remorse, this is a notice of intent that was filed on behalf of Kathleen Murphy, the property owner at 5 Jason's Lane. To familiarize you with the plan, Jason's Lane is right here at the bottom. This is a cul-de-sac. The property line is shown in bold. The existing house is located right here, centrally on the lot. This is a 1-acre lot in size. We have a couple of different series of wetlands on the property. What we're proposing to do is to construct a new garage at this location. The wetlands that we have are highlighted in blue. We have a bordering vegetated wetland. This was delineated by Brad Holmes on January 4th of this year. That's bordering on an unnamed river, a coastal river. We've delineated the bank of the coastal river. I've highlighted that in pink. Extending off of that is the 100-foot buffer zone, which runs through the middle of the property, and the 200-foot buffer zone, which runs toward the front of the property. The third resource area is land subject to coastal storm flowage, which is a contour on the ground at elevation 12, based off of the current FEMA maps. The garage, you see we're proposing here. It's located over an area that's existing driveway. It also incorporates an area that had an existing shed That driveway would obviously be displaced by the garage. The shed is proposed to be removed. We're also proposing to remove a concrete patio at the back corner of the property that's inside of the riverfront area.
Greg, where are we in the town, in part of the town?
This is right off of Gannett Road, driving from North Situate toward Minot. Okay? There's
Yeah.
a road on the right, 3-ring road.
Yeah.
This is before you get to Border Street. If you go in 3-ring road, this is the
Okay.
first cul-de-sac off of it on the right side.
Where Charity's right there. And that's that
kidding.
brook that runs up, so we come up here and catch Hollitt Street.
Gotcha. Yeah. Wow,
Took a minute.
that's a
This,
nice,
5 houses maybe?
Yeah.
On Jason's Lane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Backs up, this is all marsh out there.
and that river is unnamed?
It doesn't have a name on the assessor's.
Really
map,
is
no.
extension of the Gulf.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it drains to the Gulf, and,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it doesn't really have a name on the FEMA map.
Runs under Hollitt Street and
I'd love to see you.
out to the Gulf.
Yep, it does. So, in looking at the different applicable standards off of the BVW, the 50-foot buffer zone, we comply. The garage is at a distance of 62 feet from the BVW. In looking at the land subject to coastal storm flowage, we're obviously within that. We're not proposing any living space. This is garage only. It would be a slab foundation, and we would be providing flood vents in that garage. In looking at the riverfront area, all of our work is outside of the 100-foot inner riparian zone. And what we've proposed is to eliminate the existing shed and eliminate that existing patio so that there's, a net of 0 on additional impervious area on the site. The existing impervious area is 4,759. You're allowed up to 5,000 square feet or 10% disturbance on your lot, so we're under the 5,000 square foot threshold.
Does that include the existing house, or is this just the additional?
It's the existing house and the driveway
Driveway and
and the patio and it's the whole piece of the riverfront area.
is there a reason they didn't want to pull the new structure further up the driveway, closer to the house?
Right now, when you come down the driveway, they do park right here, and so this allows them to keep parking right there and then have room to back up and drive out the driveway.
Greg, I'm sorry, what was the square feet?
4,759 for the entire site.
Big garage.
Yeah.
Mr. Galvin?
Yes, there's a couple other things too. Anytime there's work in the riverfront area, we really need to get alternatives analysis where the applicant says, gee, here's what we're proposing, here's why I couldn't do something that's less disruptive. And we really need to get an alternatives analysis in writing on that. And also, as far as, there's wetlands off the site to the back right there too. I don't know if that person allowed you on the property or not, because there's quite a bit of wetlands on that side.
We don't know.
And then we don't know the mean high water line.
We do, at this location, it's elevation 4.2, and that was established across the street on Border Street.
Okay, so you got that.
Yeah.
And was the riverfront area, it was flagged in the field, that it come onto the property, there areas shown like where the 100 is on the property, the marks, were they there?
We didn't flag the 100-foot buffer zone. The delineation of the coastal river isn't defined by vegetation, it's defined purely by elevation. And so we took spot elevations out in the marsh to determine approximately where elevation 4.2 is in the marsh, and then offset at 100 and 200 feet.
So on the alternatives analysis, then, basically, it's a turnaround area, so they didn't want to pull it that way. and it's non-living quarters, it wouldn't trigger a septic,
No,
are they on sewer or are they on septic?
septic.
Because the design, I mean, it almost looks like a big accessory dwelling where you could live in, you know, but.
With a porch.
It's a two-bay garage and a little workshop area behind it, or beside it.
Greg, what's the distance from the wetland to the closest point on that corner?
This corner here
Yeah,
is the closest, that's 62 feet.
okay.
And this area where the building is already lawn, or?
Most of it is already the existing asphalt driveway. You can see that covers probably 80% of that area. The back piece here, there's an existing shed, and then over here is kind of scrub brush along the side of the driveway. DEP hadn't issued a file number on this when I had checked this afternoon. I do expect that we'll continue this. So,
Yeah, maybe we could get an alternatives analysis and we could walk it. I know there's a lot of debris out back left, and maybe we could do some cleanup stuff too, but.
Well, let's do it on site.
Schedule time.
Yep.
Right, okay. You must have a bunch of kids. Toy stuff, sports stuff, game.
All right. So you want to analysis?
Yeah, we could get something in writing from the applicant, you know, alternatives analysis.
All right, and then we'll make a time to go to the site.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
I mean, if there's, how we get a handle on the wetlands that are off-site to the right there, I mean, maybe we can.
I'll ask Brad to take a look at this area.
Yeah. Or even if the person gives us permission to go out there. You know, we could look rather than.
I mean, we should, when you get down that close to there, you should almost be able to eyeball that a little bit and see if it runs fairly true.
It swings back up.
From what I recall, it does something like this, but we can look at that at the on-site.
Okay.
So you want to put that out for 2 weeks?
Yeah, you think we can get that and get out there?
Yeah, we could just to check the time. We want to stick Greg with the 10 o'clock that night.
Hey, I'm sorry, but we are booked solid.
We got 4 other ones, new ones. And
We have 6,
Well, he's
7,
already on for
8,
sunset,
9.
so
Yeah,
I might just be able to go. Why don't you flip that around and do the other one, and I can just go home?
Oh, I see.
That's
Oh, no, you don't get to do that if I have to suffer, you do. So it's going to be 8:10 on May 17th, continue Jason's line.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
8:10.
Okay. Save the best for last.
Great.
Do I hear a vote?
Yes.
On May 3rd, 2017, at 8:45, in the Public Safety Complex of the Emergency Operations Center, located at 800 CJC Highway, the Scituate Conservation Commission will hold a wetlands hearing under Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Mass General Laws, and Section 30700, Town of Scituate Code of Bylaws, regarding the application of William Hale Trust, Philip von Eidestein, and William Hale to repair a septic system on property located at 810 Country Way, Scituate. Abutters and other interested parties are invited to attend.
There's a lot of interested people here.
It's tough to convince my wife I had to go to a meeting at 8:45 at the police station.
Oh, yeah.
And not get home till 11.
Yes.
Before we're done, Phil, we're going to take you out to the police station. We'll find a guy.
Put cuffs on me, and I didn't do it. Bill Spass Engineering. We're here to, system is a repair system for an existing dwelling on 810 Country Way. And as you can see, the back of the property line consists of Bound Brook in this location. This line is the flood zone, which is an AE zone, elevation 14.5, coming across the area. The BVW is in the green, coming on this side, going around, coming in, going this way. 50-foot buffer zone in through here, and the 100-foot riverfront, which we don't really have to abide by because it's a repair, is in this location, and 200-foot is in that location. What we're proposing is putting in a drip system, which is the shallowest type of septic system you get in there. We want to keep it down as much as possible. Treatment unit is going in this location 5 feet off the foundation in here, and the pump chamber is the same, 5.5 feet off the foundation. I've kept it in there, pushed it back, because this is a higher grade, and I don't want to bury that because of the groundwater situation. This is going to follow a slope coming up here. I'll be 10 feet off the water line. That sets this, and I'm going to be 7.4 feet off the property line, because I'm allowed to be 5 feet off the foundation with the system. The Board of Health approved this, Tuesday night. Make a long story short, that's it. I'll take any questions.
Penny?
No, you need a septic there,
Bill?
nowhere else to go.
Looks good.
Lisa?
Good night, Pat.
He's had too many of these easy ones late at night when everyone's worn out.
These are tough ones, these are challenging ones.
These are the ones that are fun.
But you kept it outside of the AE zone, and you kept it out of the inner riparian. Phil, who is the wetland person who flagged it?
Peggy Fantozzi?
Is she a PWS?
Yes, she's a, I don't know what else she is. She flags what, and she used to work for, let me just think, I can't, Nantucket. She was the agent in Nantucket and the agent in Dennis. She's somewhat retired, but she flags wetlands for me.
Oh, okay. Because if she's a professional wetland scientist, we could confirm and approve the septic. I mean, I think the septic is something you need to do, but sometimes we approve and issue one set of orders, we confirm the line, and, you know, we're not sure we want to have other stuff going on here without it being, you know, flagged by professional wetland scientists. So if she's got that qualification, then we'll confirm both the line and approve the septic.
There's really nowhere else to put it there.
No, the whole lot is, yeah, you're in.
He's just trying to,
This line goes on for the next 3 years.
I think she applied for your job when you got it.
Matter of fact, yeah, she did. Yeah. She was happy not to get it.
That's why it was over here.
Oh, how did I get it in my papers? Because I'm looking going, what is this? I'm reading it.
Phil, is that a septic out there?
I believe so. I don't really know, but I believe it is. It's been an older system. It goes out front between the house and the street.
Yep.
Right in that location. What it is, I don't know, but it just has to be.
Give that to Pat.
They need sewer out there.
They need sewer a lot of places. Yeah.
Don't give that one to Pat unless that's yours. Is that ours?
Yeah.
I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to close.
Second? All in favor?
Aye, good, keep it rolling.
I don't think so. I think
Oh,
we,
wait a minute, I make a motion to accept the minutes of March 15th as written.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.